and good afternoon to all of our participants today. Welcome to the second day of the SEE Universe 2020 Space Conference. It is my pleasure to announce the industry session, of which is the main topic of today's day. But also, I would like to invite you to browse our agenda today. And as per agenda, you will see that today we have some outstanding speakers, then who are followed by the Industry 4.0 panel, which will be in Serbian. So I would kindly ask for the non-Serbian speakers to have a break and then to join us at 4:30 today, when we will have our keynote speaker, Dr. Andreas Mogensen, the ESA astronaut, addressing us. And without any further ado, I would like to give the word to my dear friend and colleague, Helen Tung, who will be saying and telling us more about the space entrepreneurship. So Helen, welcome, and please.
Hi Milan, thanks so much for inviting me to this amazing SEE conference. It's something we've both been looking forward to and had many discussions about. So I'm really, really delighted that this has finally happened. So good on you and your team. So the topic I want to talk about is the notion of a hero's journey, and my target audience is specifically the entrepreneurs in the room. It doesn't preclude the policymakers, the scientists, the teachers and the professors that are there to encourage the students. But what the whole purpose of maybe my conversation to give people a background was about a year and a half ago now, what seems like 2 years, I was actually training entrepreneurs in Bosnia-Herzegovina, and I was thinking, why not do a space conference? And at the time, people said to me, well, the region is not ready for this. And I thought to myself, well, why not? We can still do it. And rightly so, the challenge was there. I worked on the basis, I was funded by the Swiss government to spend 2 weeks to basically train up entrepreneurs. And how it worked would be like this. From 9 to 5, I would sit in a room, I'll pretend to be an investor, and you would come and pitch to me. 15 minutes, 20 minutes, 30 minutes. And after that pitch, I will ask you questions. After each presentation, I asked the exact same question, which was, how about space? It didn't matter what your product was. You could be selling the best spacesuit. You could be selling, the best honey in the world. But each and every entrepreneur said to me, no, 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 I don't do space. And when they said that to me, I asked the question, why not? And they looked at me with a blank look. So then I asked them another question, which was, now you have some beautiful mountains out here. Tell me, is it harder to climb these mountains, do your entrepreneurship, or go to the moon? And they all look at me like, of course, going to the moon is the impossible task. So then I go, great, that's wonderful. It means your startup is going to be an easy job. All I did there was just to give people a perspective in what they're trying to do is not small in the sense, of course, it's a huge thing to run a startup or anything like that. But that if we put things into perspective, your mission is far greater than what you are doing. You're a piece of the puzzle. So I thought, how best to do this? And of course, I would love to share my story as I go along, is for you guys to think in your own way what these terms would help you. And I've adopted a methodology from Deepak Chopra. There was a point in my life where I went to Malaysia as well to work on a startup on helping minority populations actually in Kuching, based in the west part of Africa, west of Malaysia, sorry, that's a Freudian slip, on looking at technologies and how they could adapt it. And there I was listening to Deepak Chopra's A to Z, and it absolutely helped me. So I'm going to do the exact same thing, but with entrepreneurship. So let's start. A is for advocacy. You've got to be your own advocate. You've got to speak up for yourself, and you have to believe in yourself. That's number one. B, you've got to be brave. You've got to be believing in yourself. You've got to believe in everything you say and do is for the right purpose and for the right reasons. C, you're going to take courage. You're going to take courage in asking the investor for a sum of money. You're going to take courage in talking to your entrepreneurs, your fellow colleagues, that it's not working out. You're going to take courage to talk to your potential clients and customers, even though you know they haven't got bought in or buy-in into your idea. D, daring. Alongside guts, which I'm going to talk about later, is you've got to dare to dream, dare to think big. In fact, there's a book out there which is about, I think, the art of thinking big. If you think small, you're going to get small results. If you think big, you're going to get big results. Encourage. So it's not just about you having courage, but encourage others. You've got team members. It doesn't matter if you're a CEO, it doesn't matter if you're a founder, if you're someone working at the back seat or actually just helping out as an assistant. You've got to encourage others to say, hey guys, you're doing a great job. It's going very well and we can do better. F is about fight. And I don't mean in a conflicting kind of way. I mean, fight for the cause, fight for what you believe in. Because as we all know, as investors, as startups, you're going to get rejected time and time again. I haven't asked Milan what has been the pushback in organizing this conference, but I know it's not easy. Anything that you want to do in life, if it is easy, as my mom would say, everyone would be doing it, correct? So I would say the harder the resistance, the more you need to focus on how can I make it happen? How can we work with the naysayers to make it happen? Go for it. Go for it like as if there's no tomorrow, that your wheels are on fire, that there is a sense of urgency, that you cannot wait for the next day. Why do I say this? Now, some of you may or may not know, I'm in the Middle East and I've been here for a year and a half. The way they do business here is so fast. If you do not deliver, you've got no answer, you've got no quotations, they will go to the next person. It doesn't matter how good you think you are. It doesn't matter how much you think you know. That is not the point. You've got to work with the rhythm of the client. And sometimes it may be you directing the speed of how fast things go. And so that's why I've seen a lot of entrepreneurs. I've visited Ukraine, I've visited other countries where they say, hey, Helen, I really don't know how to do business in the Middle East because every time I come here, I spend an hour, 2 hours, 2 weeks, nothing happens. But what they don't understand is doing business here is about relationships, it's about trust, and it's about performance. So your performance in responding, your performance in how you deliver, that's really, really important here in this culture. H is for happy. You've got to be happy in what you do, right? If I tell you, please do this, do that, research on, propulsion systems, satellite systems, if you do not like it, it makes no sense. So you've got to be happy in every respect. I read something about how if we look at things differently, we get a different result. So for instance, if you think of, well, this is a bit of a chore, I need to do these cold calls, I need to sort of draw up these figures, think about the happiness you're going to generate when you get the funding, when you get the headline news that you guys made it. So look at the bigger picture and look at the end goal. I, intelligence. And this is not telling Nan to suck eggs, but it might feel like it, is use not just your actual intelligence in terms of scientific knowledge, engineering and all that. Use your EQ, use your intellectual, emotional intelligence. When you talk about doing business in your part of the world, in other parts of the world, there are many factors involved, and space is certainly no exception. I've heard so many stories when I was attending the International Space University and also partaking myself. I'm sure there are some attendees out there that cultural conflicts or cultural differences have a factor to play, and also linguistical language differences have something to play. Speak slowly, use diagrams, try to understand where the other side is coming from so we have a common ground. Joy. I use the word joy, and you can see I popped in a lot of optimistic words because I think if you're going to do something, then you might as well do it with passion and do it with lots of love. And what I mean by joy is not estatic. Yeah, joy is not I'm winning $1 million every month. Joy is this art of living, which is that you are so grateful for everything that you have. You're so grateful for your team, the investments, the funding, the support you're getting from the government, your family, particularly in a COVID-19 situation. You want to be in a place of joy. That's what I'm encouraging everyone to be in because, as an entrepreneur, it is stressful. There are more complaints and there are going to be thanks. There's going to be long hours. There's going to be sleep. So you've got to be joyful to make yourself happy. Yeah. And I was going to say kick some action, you know what I mean? So it's a bit like if you think in terms of energy, and I mean this in a sort of a more esoteric kind of perspective, is what you generate is important as much as how you engage with others. So I'm sure you guys are professionals, students, you engage with people. If you're in a good mood, it creates a good mood. If you're in a shitty mood, it creates the same. So I would say the same about your entrepreneur and your startup. So let's say you ask yourself, well, what kind of branding am I trying to create? What kind of things do I want people to think about when I think of this particular startup? So these are the kinds of things that maybe as a hardcore engineer, as a scientist, as someone who only at this point thinks about how can I promote my science-specific technology, it's really important to think about because it's the long-lasting effect that people have in terms of impression, and that flows from investors to your customers. L is for love, and I really mean that, but I would start from yourself first. So love yourself, it sounds as cheesy as everything, but you got to, because the journey is going to be hard and it's going to feel like a long slog. What do I mean by that? You're going to get people who are going to say, look, I joined you a year, 2 years, 3 years ago. I've lost hope. We've got no investors. I'm going to leave this startup. If a co-founder does that to you, it is not nice. It is a hard place to be. And I've been there, okay? I've been there when I thought everything was plain sailing and it hit me like a rock. But the good thing you learn from it is people have different circumstances. You learn to extend your sense of understanding. And to be honest, I went on my trajectory, which was I continued on my journey without my co-founder, who was quite happily within their own space agency, which is fine. And then I discovered entrepreneurship is not for everyone. So it's worth trying in a lifetime. It's worth knowing, where do you fit in this picture of the ecosystem? We need the scientists, we need the investors, we need the entrepreneurs, and we need people helping the entrepreneurs, i.e. the employees and everyone else. So just figure out, what role do you feel most comfortable in? That's fine, that's perfectly okay. Memories. Now, there is something that I've read too many and I've heard too many audiobooks, but just to share with you, they say that in terms of relationships, in terms of with people, it doesn't matter what happens when in terms of arguments and all that, it's what is the lasting impression that you leave. To give an example, let's say you approach an investor, you really, really want them to invest in you. They say, sorry, this time you're too premature, we don't know how you can fit into our portfolio. Don't worry, be grateful, be thankful. Say, do you know what? We would love to keep in touch. I'd love to talk to you in, say, in 6 months' time when we know we've progressed, and we would love to have that conversation and pick up from where we left off. Isn't that a wonderful way to say thank you for all the time that you spent? Because as far as they're concerned, they're looking at thousands and thousands of applications. But for you to take that, make that extra effort and say, thank you very much. I want to touch base with you. You never know. And the untold truth is, investors want to see you grow. They want to see you succeed. And so your chances of success is when you do grow and you show them you're growing, they're more likely to invest in you. No, N is for no. So when you are a startup, you want to do everything. And when I say everything, I mean it. You're only human. Even if you're a machine, you're going to have take some time out, okay? So what I want to say is, you have to learn to say no. In the same way when they say learn to say yes, which is fine, learn to say no. So how do you do that? You've got to prioritize. You've got to say, okay, as the role of the CEO, what is my job, right? You cannot attend every single conference. You cannot speak in every engagement. But I have discovered some CEOs will get to that stage where their no actually genuinely means they're so busy they can't do it. However, then you've got to think of a team or a bunch of people that can do it for you, because what you don't want, marketing is really important and it's often underestimated. In the same way in social media, I'll give you an example. I've been speaking to some businesses, banks here, and they say, do you know how much it costs to get into Forbes, and to get into Times magazine and all that? A number of few $1,000s. So when they come and invite you to interview you for free, you do not say no to them. But if you could save a way to say, look, okay, I can't do it now, but I need to do it in a few weeks' time, that's fine. But you get what I'm trying to say. You might get involved in a lot of things, a lot of invites. So it's a question of time management, because what you don't want to do is exhaust yourself. O is for opportunity. So you see how I'm sort of going through the whole alphabet. Opportunity would knock at your door, but you need to be ready. How often have we heard that, right? Timing is of essential. If you're not in the right mindset, if someone comes with $1 million and say, look, I want to invest in you, and you say, but I don't know why you want to invest in us, we have nothing. Wrong answer. You should say, yes, I would love for your investment. Do you mind if we come back to you in a few weeks' time once we finalize our pitch deck, and then you hit the ground running with your pitch deck? I have met startups who literally met an investor face to face and drew up their pitch deck on a piece of paper and got investment that way. I will not name them, but they're a big startup in Japan. So I want to say, if they can do it, anyone can. I'm going to quickly move over the alphabet again. P is for praise. Praise your friends and family because they're supporting you. Q is for question. Ask questions. Don't assume your product is the best, your service is the best. Ask, can I do it better? R is to remember your values. Do not forget that, because you do not want to get any investment just for the sake of it, and you don't want any clients just for the sake of it. You want to know it's aligned with your values, because it's going to mean something in the long term. S is success. Define your success. What does it mean? T is trust. Find people that you can trust to confide in, professionally, emotionally, And U is to have an umbrella approach. Don't be single-minded in things you do. Look at the bigger picture. W is think like a winner. This is always a good one. Sometimes we need to give first before we receive. So think that way. X, I don't know. Maybe think of SpaceX. Use SpaceX as your idol. Y is to yell about your success. In other words, sometimes we can be a bit too modest, but I think it's totally okay that if you want to be successful, you need to be held accountable and that you let people know what your goals are. Z is for Zumba. Why did I put that in there? Get some exercise, right? Don't just work. You're going to get back pain and all sorts. You have to eat well, drink well, sleep well. Now, right now, I don't sound like a lawyer. I sound like a mild lawyer. I coach entrepreneurs. I have my own startup called Space 2060, as much as being a lawyer at Hamdan Al Jamzi. But what I would say is being an entrepreneur is a lifestyle choice. I would put it this way. It's not going to be easy, but it's lots of fun. It's very exciting. And so I really want to encourage you all, those that have the view or the will to do it, because you're going to get the rewards. How much you put in is how much you're going to get out. So thank you, Milan. That pretty much wraps up, unless there's some questions. I hope you have a wonderful conference, that you feel fully inspired, charged for the rest of the day. So thank you, Milan. Thanks.
Thank you, Helen, so much for joining us today, and of course, for your inspiring speech about the space entrepreneurship. I'm sure that a lot of people here in Serbia would like to hear more, and I will be happy to connect them with you, of course. So thank you once again.
Thank you very much for your time. Thanks.
Okay, before we proceed, today I'm joined with my two co-hosts, Mr. Milan Stojanovic from the Belgrade Observatory, as well as with Ms. Jacqueline Mir from Go Taikonauts. And my dear colleague, Mr. Milan Stojanovic is next, and he will be talking to us about the opportunities for funding space R&D, which is an exciting topic in Horizon Europe. So, Dr. Stojanovic, please, you have the floor.
Thank you. So this is presentation. I hope you can see it. Okay. Okay. So you know already who I am. I'm working at the Astronomical Observatory, but during the last 6 years, I was also appointed by our ministry to be an NCP and PC for Horizon 2020. So I will give you a little bit of insights how we, let's say, passed with flying colors in Horizon 2020. And I will try to tell you more about Horizon Europe as the next EU research and innovation program. It will start on the 1st January of 2021. So a little bit of perspective. You can at any time visit the Horizon 2020 website. They have a really nice website with all the characteristics, key figures, everything for each country, for each participant that ever joined Horizon. And for example, on this slide, you can see that Serbia got a net EU contribution of 116 million euro. For the whole Horizon. I'm not talking only about space, but the whole Horizon, all segments. There was in total 355 signed grants, and our success rate was around, so actually 11.61%. This is just a little bit below the average, which is 13.68. So since we returned so much money to the country with all the grants that were signed, this is really excellent because Serbia paid for the participation in the Horizon 2020 much less than this number. This is one interesting graph, and they have a lot of nice visualization on this website. I'm not going to show all of them, but this one is one of my favorites. You have lines coming from the Serbia that are connected with the countries that are our collaborators on the projects that were signed during the 6 years. And the thicker line is more collaboration. And here you can see that the top 5 countries that were our collaborators were Italy, Spain, Germany, France, UK, Greece, and so on. So it's important to show this because I think there is a huge perspective for our region, for not just for Southeast Europe, but the whole Europe when it comes to Horizon framework program. They are looking equally at member states and associated countries. We are associated country and we have the same rights in the Horizon as any other country, which is great. That means we can be coordinators, we can propose our own project and so on. So all the info about Horizon Europe is located on this web page. That's the homepage of Horizon Europe. Sometimes it's a little bit hard to find information that you need, but if you need any help, you can always contact NCPs that are national contact points for the Horizon. Our ministry has a public list on the website of all NCPs. So let me tell you a little bit more about Horizon Europe. If you remember, in Horizon 2020, there were 3 pillars, same like here. First one is almost the same, but the second one changed a lot. The previous name of this pillar was industrial leadership. The name is now similar, global challenges and industrial competitiveness. But what changed here are these clusters. So now everything is organized in clusters in this pillar. And you can see here, if you don't know, the total amount of money that will be distributed for 6 years for Horizon Europe is 100 billion euros. The global challenges and industrial competitiveness, which is most important for us here for this conference, for everybody who is in the area of space, of digital, of big data, AI, everything is connected through these clusters. And you should follow the calls for these clusters. The total value for this is 52 billion, which means more than half is appointed for this sector, which is incredible, really. So what is new? The Horizon Europe is still in the phase of preparation, and we don't know all things. They had a little bit of drawback, of course, because of COVID, but almost everything is ready, and they said that everything will be finished up to the 1st of January. There are some new things, and the new things in Horizon are listed here. Some are, let's say, like this, they will try to reduce administrative burden. The whole procedure will be even more simplified, if it is possible, for the beneficiaries to have the best way and the easiest way to ask, to apply for grants, for money. And as Helen just said, you need always to just go and ask and talk, and you can actually think about the Horizon Europe as the people who are going to finance your first projects, your SME, your industry or academia, research center, whatever. 2 new things that I would like to mention here are missions and partnerships. This is a completely new approach in the Horizon Europe, and the missions are, let's say, something that they want to present as ambitious, bold goals to tackle issues that affect our daily lives. Examples could range from fight against cancer, clean transport, plastic-free oceans, and so on. The idea is that some part of the money will be dedicated to missions and to partnerships, and you will apply for this through grants, through tenders, through any other way of the proposals that they will offer. Of course, every time when you see some presentation in Brussels from the European Commission, you will see something like this, a slide showing how we stand compared to the big countries like USA, Korea, and Japan. So, for example, here you can see the business R&D investment in percentage of the GDP, and you can see that the EU is still lower than the budget from the USA, for example, for the same thing. And actually, not the budget, that's the investment, that's the business investment. Here on the right side, for example, you have venture capital. This is another phase that EU will try to boost, and I think that part of the idea with the partnership will actually do this. So where are we now in Horizon Europe? The European Horizon Europe legislative package is finished, it's done. The strategic plan is already developed, and it's already appointed, so it's also ready. And now they are working on this part, on work program 21-22. When this will be finished, and they announced it should be in this month or something like that, you will have the calls for proposals for the next 2 years. So this is a document you want to read. It will have 50 to 100 pages for each cluster, but this will give you opportunity to prepare yourself and prepare the best project for the best time and to apply at the best possible position. What they always say in Horizon is that you can have the best idea in the world, and you cannot apply if there is no call. There is no dedicated call that will cover that idea. So you have to wait for the appropriate call. As you can see here, there is a comparison. For example, a total budget that I said for next 6 years for Horizon Europe is 100 billion. And for example, for ITER, which is extremely important project, is around 10 billion. Hopefully they will get to the point, but that's not the point of this presentation. So let me just tell you a few more things, and I will finish with the targeted impacts and some opportunities. Actually, what you should look and what you should go for in your presentation when you try to apply for the money in your proposal, when you try to apply for the money in Horizon Europe. So they're, of course, saying a lot of interesting things here, like Europe should be fit for the digital age. Then they will pursue the key strategic value chains by supporting digital, other key enabling and space technologies, leadership in advanced materials, human-centric AI, blockchain, high performance, quantum computing algorithms, and other things. So don't make some let's say problems about if there is no call for your idea. There will be, believe me, there will be. It's maybe just not the first call, but maybe in the second one. What are the opportunities? This means what you should aim for. I'm not saying that ideas that are not covered by this list are not important and that they are not going to be financed. They will be, the best one will be, but this is where they will spend most of the money. And if you can recheck here, you see a climate neutral, clean EU industries, critical raw materials, technological and digital solutions, and space services that contribute to climate mitigation, environmental protection, mobility, and security. I listed all of them here. This is covering the whole cluster for digital industry and space. But I listed all of them because I think they're all connected with all the participants in this conference, because this is your opportunity. When we talk about the space part, about the part, only one small segment of the cluster 4, then we can talk, of course, about industrial leadership in digital technologies, in space services, data, technology infrastructures, autonomy and strategic value chains, and so on. There is one important segment here. The whole document that I am presenting here is available online on the website at the beginning, and it has like 100 pages. So I tried to list some things that you shouldn't miss. If you are in a space business, then this is what you should also aim for. The EU autonomy in accessing and using space will be reinforced with new concepts, production, operation, cost, and so on. Opportunities for in-orbit validation and in-orbit demonstration, which is IOV and IOD, if you see sometimes these abbreviations, that's it. That will contribute to de-risk new technologies, concepts, applications, and so on. So this is a segment that they mention also here, for example, operation costs such as the reusability of launcher components, low cost but high trust in green propulsion, and so on. When we talk about space, it's very important to mention that additional money will be provided by Galileo, Copernicus, SST, and GoSatcom. These four segments will have a separate calls, so don't forget to look for this also when you are looking for the appropriate call for your space idea. Galileo is covering everything in global navigation, Copernicus in Earth observation system, and space satellite awareness and space surveillance and tracking is covered by another topic. GoSatcom is always interesting, and if you are in this domain. For the last slide, I'm just leaving you. I will put this presentation online, hopefully with my colleague Milan, and hopefully with a lot of you others that are ready to share your presentation. These are the missions that will cover the whole digital industry and space cluster, but many of them can be, let's say, attacked by the space community. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Milan, so much for your outstanding presentation, and I'm sure that it will, draw a lot of attention here in Serbia, because there are a lot of organizations which require additional funding. So once again, thank you. Our next speaker is Mr. Jeremija Hranjec, who works within the who is Senior Project Manager and Innovation Consultant within ESA BIC Austria, and he will be talking about how to get your business off the ground with the ESA incubation centers. So please, Jeremija, you have the word. Thank you.
Well, thank you, Milan, for preparing this really interesting conference, and it was a pleasure to hear actually these speeches yesterday and also today. It was really nice to see also the opportunities that are coming for whole Europe and that are going to be available for Serbia. So I will be talking today about the ESA network, of course. So at this point, ESA has the 22 member states, and of course it has also the formal cooperation with all of the 22 of the member states. And let's see what people in ESA member states actually think about it. So as we can see now, people think that more than 90% people in ESA member states believe that investment in space is important or very important. And of course, that we should invest more in space. And I think we all couldn't agree more about that. So coming to the ESA Business Incubation Centers, which is something that I'm gonna focus on today, I believe that this is the first instance that startups can reach for in ESA member states. And of course, at this point, this is also the largest space innovation network on a global level. At this point, there's 21 centers in more than 60 locations, and we have supported more than 900 startups, which means that we are supporting more than 190 startups yearly. And all of the ESA Business Incubation Centers are operated by national partners. National partner for Austria is Science Park Graz, is one of the oldest incubators in Austria, founded in 2002 with a really good track record of more than 200 projects supported and 1,000 new jobs created. So also in ISABIC Austria, we have supported more than 30 companies in the last 4 years. And yesterday we were talking a lot about the science in space, and today we are trying to dig more deeply into the space economy. So what is actually the space economy? It's also the full range of activities from development, developing, providing and using of space-related products and services. And something that's really interesting for me is that according to ESPI, startups are the next driver of the innovation of the space technologies, because they found that they're radically more innovative and global oriented than other European startups. So let's try to talk a bit more about the downstream sector. And also I will try to give you an insight into this incubation network, but also the space startup ecosystem in Europe, by introducing our startups from various sectors. And this is how I'll try to just paint a picture for you of how the space-related startup ecosystem looks in Europe. So it all started, the ESA Business Incubation Center started with the technology transfer a bit less than 20 years ago. And at the beginning, the main idea was to transfer the technology and know-how of decades of development in ESA to other terrestrial sectors. So we know that we today are using a lot of technology that has embedded in itself a lot of space-related, something that was at the beginning space-related research, such as, I don't know, wireless headphones and laptop or airbag issues and so on. And of course, this is also something that we are still supporting. So technology transfer is still really important part of the ESA Business Incubation Centers. And I will try to show it on the example of a startup that we're incubating. It's called the Blue Planet Ecosystem. And what they're doing, they're transferring know-how from ESA into the building of enclosed sustainable aquaculture systems. Of course, just to let you know, you will be able to, of course, reach all of the startups that I'm talking about now today on our web pages. And of course, if you wanna also connect with them, just let me know. So in recent years, there's of course the rise of the space technologies, other space technologies such as navigation, Earth observation, telecommunication, and so on. So let's start with navigation. In Europe, we are promoting mostly the use of Galileo and EGNOS as European systems. There is a really clear trend in the autonomous vehicles, but I would like to present here the Artificial Intelligence, one of our most successful startups that won the Galileo Masters overall winner for last year. They're recent alumnus of ours, and what they're doing is that they're optimizing operations of airports and airlines. Let's go ahead to the communication. Of course, there's a lot of talk about the Starlink and OneWeb, which is currently UK/Indian company. But there's also European startups that are working on that. One of them is Hyber. It's not part of ISABIC Austria, but it's part of the ESA ecosystem. And they're providing interesting system of IoT connectivity for remote areas that's really accessible and cheap and easy to use. Something that's always maybe most interesting is the upstream sector, of course. As we already talked about SpaceX and OneWeb, there's a huge growth in the constellation and number of small satellites. So this is something that's opening the market for the producers of small satellite components, because they also need to be cost effective. But not only that, but also SpaceX and Blue Origin, they paved ways for the startups such as the Team Tumbleweed, which is inspiring story and project coming by young team. And what they're doing is that they're building the next generation Mars rover that you can see on a picture here. And now we are going into the Earth observation. So Earth observation has a strong presence in ESABICS, of course, because we are trying to foster using of full power of Sentinel satellites in Europe. And trend that we observed is, of course, use of artificial intelligence. As you can see here in this slide, almost all of the papers that are currently being published on the remote sensing are connected to the artificial intelligence. Also, there's the trend of putting AI on chip on the satellite. So one of the examples for this is FISAT that's launched by ESA. And the initial idea is to actually send only the data back to Earth. That makes sense because at this point we are getting a lot of pictures of clouds. And later on, it will also be possible to track some things in real time using the AI on chip on the satellite. Of course, something that I personally think that's also going to grow quite fast during next years is using Earth observation for business intelligence. And I also saw some startups working in this field, especially in the precision agriculture coming from Serbia. So this is something that's that really is well enabled in the ecosystem that have a good basis of IT infrastructure and IT knowledge. But let's start with just a few companies that are incubated in ESABIC Austria. So we have a Sentinel Hub, which is developing European data cube. Then we have quite a few of the startups that are working into precision agriculture, such as Refarmo, Cropom, LGN. We have also quite interesting startup that's using drones in agriculture. The name is UpDrones. And then we have Audili, which is the winner of Copernicus Masters Biowa Smart Farming Challenge. And they're giving insight into the soil properties using satellite data. And then we have startups also that are using Earth observation to do something that's not so conventional, such as Perigi, which is helping NGOs to have better insight into the humanitarian crisis. Ice King is using the citizen science for glacial research, and Hyatt is using Earth observation to explore the potential of small hydropower plants. What are we providing in ESABIC Austria, but also this goes along for all of the ESA business incubation centers in Europe. We are providing one of the world's largest incubation networks. We are providing 50,000 euros on non-equity funding that can be used for the prototype and or IPR. We are providing access to ESA technical expertise, and we are providing business assistance, reach to the global investors, office space, and other opportunities that are arising from networks such as the events and networking opportunities, competitions. That ESA is providing a lot of opportunities for startups to actually network and to pitch in front of investors. And also something that's nothing less important, we are providing the powerful branding coming together with ESA that provides the credibility to young companies and their products. How is it working? All of the ESA business incubation centers have open call. We have ours that has deadline on 27th of October, and application procedure can be found on our web pages. But if you're interested in our incubator or in any of our startups, also this is something that's usually after a speech on a conference you would approach a speaker, but I would really invite you to go ahead and ask me questions. If you won't have opportunity, just to let me know on my email address. Thank you.
Thank you, Jeremia, first of all, for your insightful presentation, as well as your excellent timekeeping skills. We will be sure to send you all of the potential questions to your email, which has been provided below. And yeah, thank you very much for participation. I know that this is not a standard conference, but we have to do and to manage as we go. So once again, thank you very much for your time and hope to cooperate in the future.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, we are now going next to our next speaker, Marcel Freit. It's a pleasure to see you again, Marcel. Marcel will be talking about, the title of his topic is From the First Slovak Satellite to High Energy Astrophysics. He works at the project management and satellite integrations within a space management company in Slovakia. Marcel, you have the word. Thank you.
Yes, thank you. Hopefully you can all hear me, and now you should also see a presentation. Am I correct, please? Please tell me.
Yes, it works. It works fine.
Okay, so as you heard, my name is Marcel Freit, and I am representing SpaceManic and also a little bit the Slovak Organization for Space Activities. And as you can see from the title, this is going to be a little bit of a storytelling presentation, because every project, every startup has its start, and our origins are in SOSA, which is an organization uniting people interested in space from every age group and every background, and has been founded some 10 years ago. We are doing a lot of popularization and some own research and development, and of course, a support for entry to European Space Agency, as you may have heard just a minute ago. It provides a lot of opportunities, and hopefully in a few months we will take the next step to be an associate member of ESA. So, but we are here to talk about satellites and space technology. So the first Slovak satellite was called SK Cube, and it was developed by our Slovak engineers, students at the time, and a little bit by Slovak companies. It was developed from scratch, from the ground up, even if some almost 10 years ago, there was already a small market for CubeSat components, but we wanted to demonstrate our own capabilities to prove to Slovak public, to our neighbors and other European countries that yes, Slovak people can also build satellites. This started with what we called ULO, which was a high altitude balloon platform in around 2007, and in 2011 the first workshop dedicated to the satellite itself was conducted, and in 2017 we were successfully launched to space on an Indian launcher. As you can see in the pictures, there was some preliminary ideas, and finally we reached the integration in Netherlands facilities. So from a technical point of view, it was a 1-unit CubeSat, which is a 10 by 10 by 10 centimeter cube, weighing roughly 1 kilogram, in a sun-synchronous orbit, communicating over UHF radio bands. And as you can see, our in-house built components were electronics, the onboard computing capabilities, its real-time operating system, the power supply unit and solar panels, the radio, the attitude determination and control system, including all the sensors and magnet workers for control. There was, of course, apart from technological experiment and showcase, there was also a small scientific experiment with very low frequencies, which are very hard to observe from Earth because they are reflected from the ionosphere. And all the components were actually basically technological experiments of our designs. Also, the whole downlink situation with an operation was done by a Slovak, by our own ground station. But we had a lot of success with, for example, SatNox network, which is an open source project by SERBSPACE Foundation. Worthy to check out. We were able to get a lot of data from all around the globe using this open source network for satellite reception. And also the satellite was also partly an amateur radio device, and the community was using it a lot. We had a digipeater, so radio amateur operators were able to communicate through the satellite over the horizon, basically. Of course, this was not done just by us. We had partners from the government institutions, universities, including Košice, Žilina, and Bratislava, so covering the whole of Slovakia, and also some commercial partners who either contributed financially or by developing some components for the project. For example, RMC was behind the power supply unit. But the first is not always perfect, and after 15 days in orbit, the satellite lost a lot of its capabilities because we lost the communication with the onboard computer. And due to these problems, just 3 out of 21 experiments planned were not performed. This unfortunately included the camera and the scientific experiment itself. Most probably the problem was caused by radiation over in the South Atlantic anomaly region. We had still communication with the radio, which functioned for almost 2 years, some 550 days in orbit. We were able to successfully test and develop an exploit, so basically a hack to try to wake up the satellite, but unfortunately, after almost 2 years, the radio also died, and we were not able to carry it out. So, in a one slide, approximately 1 hour after launch, 1/2 of an hour after the launch, we were looking at our screens, seeing the first communication with our ground station. And on 12th of January in 2019, we received the last recognized data packet. You do not know which packet will be last, so we do not have a photo of this moment, but just a radio packet from our ground station. The results of this project were some 5 years of technological development, approximately 50 people involved in the project with the core team of 12 engineers and 10 people in not technical roles. Approximately 27,000 man-hours completely volunteered, 5,000 plus components used, some 10,000 lines of code written, and approximately 2 million packets. 569 days of orbit operation, which we can assume that the radio communicated with us, so that was working, and we didn't observe any restart, so the power supply unit and the power system also worked. So we basically lost communication with the OBC. We do not know if it was a fault on the OBC side or just some communication lines. That's the harsh truth of space. When something goes wrong, you can just go up and check it out. But anyway, we are very happy with all the 19 experiments done. 1 country, 3 universities, approximately 20 companies, a lot of enthusiasts who helped along the way with development and further data analysis. Some 500 lectures and presentations, counting with this one, for example, direct media outputs, radio amateur operators involved, bachelor diploma dissertation thesis, and still more possible since we have the data on our hard drives. There's still a lot of stuff we can do with this satellite. But even if the satellite stops working, we cannot stop working, and we need to look for the next endeavors. The SKQ project, as I said in the beginning, was meant to show that we are able to do this, and a number of spin-off companies and startups were founded, and amongst them is, of course, SpaceManic. And our next endeavor is GRB Alpha satellite, used to detect gamma ray burst events, which are a hot topic, not just because of the huge energy involved, but because of all the unknown surrounding it in the field of astrophysics. So the experiment itself is a Hungarian, Czech, and Japanese collaboration, led by our longtime SOSA member and our cooperator Norbert Werner. It is going to be a 1-unit satellite, so another 10-centimeter cube. Its purpose is to demonstrate technology for the upcoming and planned Camelot constellation, and we will verify the design of the scintillator, which will detect these astrophysical events, management of temperature, precise time stamping of these events using a GNSS, and all of this is built on flight heritage hardware from SKQ. So we are improving our designs and making it more friendly for our users. In short, the detection itself is based on a scintillator, so the event the scintillator catches a high energy particle and produces photons. The same experiment is already integrated on board of VZLU Sat-2 from Czech company VZLU. Why is this project so important to us? Well, it is a first SpaceManic project as a company, as a commercial endeavor, and the project won the second place in IAF competition for a free launch from GK Launch Services from Russia. It was planned to go to space already in May this year, but due to various delays, the current date is March 2021 on a Soyuz 2 rocket. And as I mentioned, it is a precursor for a Camelot constellation, which is planned to have at least 9 3-unit CubeSats, so 10 by 10 by 30 centimeters, using the proven technology from GRB Alpha demonstration and VZLU Sat, and will provide the all-sky monitoring of these gamma ray burst events with a planned localization within 1 degree on the sky. The detector is comparable to a Fermi satellite, basically. There's of course some problems with detection over before mentioned, for example, South Atlantic anomaly, which are naturally regions with high energy particles present. So we will it will be also be part of research of this. And to keep the time, this is one of my last slides, and we see that the future of SpaceManic is in GRB Alpha satellite, which is currently being developed in its last phases, waiting for integration in the spring and launch. Mentioned VZLU company, we were able to successfully deliver solar panels and GNSS component for their satellite, which will be launched in December this year. And we have a more cooperation planned with them to come. And another project I can publicly speak about is a BD-SAT from which is a cooperation with a Czech branch of BD sensors, and it's going to be a technological experiment with pressure sensors and supercapacitors as a possible energy source for the next satellites. And of course, you tell me what's the future of our company. We are a launch provider. We heard yesterday and today about a lot of science and scientific experiments, but these experiments need satellites to fly on. And that's where basically we want to come to play and help you with the intense cooperation. So you can focus on your experiments and we will focus on the satellite itself. And I believe I'm just on time to thank you. And if you want to contact us, you can see our information for CubeSats and components in this space manning. And yesterday we saw some educational people in the Q&A. So a lot of popularization educational projects are under Slovak Organization for Space Activities. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Marcel, for your insightful, once again, wonderful presentation. I'm sure that, first of all, I would like to wish you all the luck, all the best in your future endeavors. And I do hope that there is some cooperation between Serbia and your company. So once again, thank you for the presentation.
Of course. Thank you.
And yes, and now we would like to finish with the English part of today's session. And I would like to give the word to my co-host, Milan Stojanovic, to start announcing the second part. Milan, you have the word.
Hvala. Pa nastavljamo na srpskom jeziku. Imamo jedan izuzetno zanimljiv panel i meni je velika čast da predstavim goste koji učestvuju na ovom panelu. Panel se zove Industrija 4.0, što je jedna zaista interesantna i goruća tema u celom svetu, prilično nov termin, tako da verujem da će biti interesantno čuti o ovome od ljudi koji su upravo u tom segmentu i koji tu najbolje mogu da komentarišu. Moderator panela je profesor Radivoje Mitrović, dekan Mašinskog fakulteta. Profesore, da li se čujem? Možete da uključite. Odlično, vidim vas. Dobro.
Čujemo se odlično, dobar dan, poštovanje.
Poštovanje, čujemo se, tako da je sve u redu. Sljedeći gost je profesor Dragan Đuričin sa Ekonomskog fakulteta. Zamolit ću profesora Đuričina da i on uključi kameru, je li on sa nama? A on je sa... Izvinjavam se. U redu. Zatim imamo Vidoslava Majstorovića, profesor sa Mašinskog fakulteta. I imamo još Vidoslavu Đagić, koja je pomoćnik direktora Privredne komore u Srbiji. Dobar dan. I Vojin Vukadinović, koji je direktor sektora za istraživanje i razvoj i IT u Metalcu.
Dobar dan svima.
Profesore Mitroviću, imate reč, izvolite.
Dobar dan i poštovanje. Drago mi je da smo i u ovim epidemiološki teškim uslovima uspeli da se okupimo i da nešto što je već pre mnogo godina započeto, a to je implementacija i involviranje svetskih iskustava u oblasti platforme koju najčešće zovemo Industrija 4.0, ovoga puta govorimo o inovacijama i ekonomskom rastu. Mislim da ne treba čak mnogo ekonomskih znanja, mada imamo danas profesora Đuričina sa nama, da ukažemo na važnost ove teme, digitalizacije, robotizacije proizvodnje, inovacija generalno, a specijalno u modernim tehnologijama na ekonomski rast bilo kompanije, bilo države. Mislim da je u prethodnom periodu u Srbiji urađeno mnogo, nikada nije mnogo i nikada nije dovoljno i uvek može više, ali mnogo u smislu da je važnost ove platforme prepoznata, da ne samo na akademskom nivou, da je sadržaj novih disciplina involviran u nastavne planove i programe većine inženjerskih fakulteta. Ja vrlo pouzdano mogu da govorim o onome što je urađeno na Mašinskom fakultetu. Mi u ponedeljak startujemo master studijski program Industrija 4.0 zajedno sa Matematičkim fakultetom Univerziteta u Beogradu, a i u drugim predmetima koji imaju veze sa ovim disciplinama, veštačkom inteligencijom, digitalizacijom i savremenim načinom upravljanja proizvodnim procesima je došlo do značajnog osvežavanja sadržaja pojedinih predmeta i disciplina. To je jedan pravac, a drugi je povezivanje fakulteta i dakle akademske zajednice sa jedne strane i realnog sveta privrede sa druge strane, ne samo kroz jedan veliki broj panela koji smo organizovali, nego i kroz nekoliko međunarodnih konferencija čija je centralna tema bila Industrija 4.0, na kojima smo imali sreću da imamo vrhunske goste, učesnike te konferencije, da na najkraći i brži mogući način shvatimo šta se u svetu dešava i da te najnovije stvari implementiramo, involviramo, da kažem, širom Srbije. Ja bi možda zato zamolio profesora Majstorovića da on o ovom aspektu šta smo do sada uradili, prvo sve nas informiše, a onda bi zamolio profesora Dragana Đuričina da kao najkompetentniji o tome kako inovacije i cela ova modernizacija vezana za platformu Industrija 4.0 utiče na ekonomski rast govori, pa ako se slažete, evo ja bih dao reč profesoru Majstoroviću.
Zahvaljujem profesore, evo pozdravljam i ostale koleginice i kolege učesnike ovog panela, naravno pre svega i organizatora konferencije kolega Mijovića koji je imao sluha da o ovoj vrlo važnoj temi ne samo u našoj zemlji, već i širom sveta danas govorimo i na ovaj način kroz ovaj panel. Dakle, kao što je profesor rekao, već više od 5 godina Mašinski fakultet sa svojim partnerima, pre svega Privrednom komorom Srbije i sa partnerima iz drugih oblasti kao iz industrije, predano radi na projektu Industrije 4.0 u našoj zemlji. Zato smo ovdje, profesor Mitrović i ja, pripremili nekoliko slajdova koje ćemo napraviti i pokazati onima koji nas prate jednu rekapitulaciju šta to znači i kako je naša industrija ovdje u našoj zemlji spremna za primjenu ovog modela. Dakle, mi se trenutno nalazimo na Mašinskom fakultetu. Beogradski univerzitet je najstariji univerzitet u ovom regionu. Ponosimo se time što smo već nekoliko godina unazad među 500 najboljih univerziteta u svijetu, a Mašinski fakultet već više od skoro vek i po slaviti uskoro univerzitetskog obrazovanja vezanog za mašinsko inženjerstvo. Dakle, postoji visoka tradicija u ovoj oblasti. Dakle, ovu godinu smo, bez obzira što smo imali probleme vezano za pandemiju koronavirusa, uspjeli da organizujemo i realizujemo konferenciju o Industriji 4.0 koju je profesor Mitrović rekao, čija je osnovna tema bila Industrija 4.0 podržana cloud modelom, a ovaj rad koji ćemo ovdje sada izložiti kroz nekoliko slajdova odnosi se na tome kako da u našoj zemlji pristupimo ovom projektu u našoj industriji. Dakle, vezane za sadržaj ovog izlaganja su pregled istraživanja u svijetu vezano za spremnost industrije primjenu modela 4.0, kako izgleda naš model i neki rezultati koje smo ovdje postigli. Dakle, možemo da jednostavno kad nas pitaju, a to je najčešće pitanje naših kolega inženjera iz fabrika, šta to znači Industrija 4.0 u praktičnom smislu reći, mi možemo da im kažemo da je to novi model automatizacije proizvodnje baziran na internetu i da je kao osnovni koncept definisan još 2011. godine. Dakle, on se zasniva na tome da su povezani mašine i računari preko sistema koje nazivamo cyber fizički, da su oni međusobno umreženi koristeći cloud computing i internet stvari i da u celom ovom konceptu da bi podigli nivo inteligencije ovakvih sistema koristimo čitav metod tehnika veštačke inteligencije. Dakle, što se tiče naše zemlje, najvažnije činjenice o Industriji 4.0 su definisanje industrijske politike za industrije 4.0, zatim obrazovanje i to pre svega visokoškolsko i srednjoškolsko za industriju 4.0. Dakle, profesor je već rekao da Mašinski fakultet osluškujući potrebe privrede je krenuo u realizaciju i upis studenta za master studije u ovoj oblasti, zatim istraživanja, posebno primijenjena istraživanja koja se kroz Ministarstvo znanosti i tehnologiju realizuju i na kraju okrenuto se ovog koncepta malim i srednjim preduzećima koje čine kičmu industrijskog modela u našoj zemlji. Dakle, kada govorimo o spremnosti naše industrije, evo samo nekoliko slajdova koji govore o tome kako s ovim pitanjima prilazi u svijetu. Mi živimo po ovom konceptu u okruženju koji je dakle bliži i širi. Svijet je postao jedno sa ovog aspekta jedno globalno selo, tako da kompjuterske tehnologije nam omogućuju da radimo na ovaj način kao što ovaj koncept industrije 4.0 govori. Prvo, moram da kažemo šta se pod tim pojmom zrelosti s aspekta primjene modela industrije 4.0 podrazumijeva. Dakle, naše kolege koji se bave ovim procesima kažu da je to menadžment promjenama, a dakle, suštinska promjena je kako iz postojeće fabrike koja je manje ili više digitalizovana da pređemo u fabriku koja ima više ili manje ili više elemenata industrije 4.0 povezanih u jednu celinu. Dakle, to je prvi osnov. Kako se sada ti nivoji spremnosti za upravljanje promjenama koje zahtjeva industrija 4.0 realizuju u praksi? Ima ih nekoliko prilaza. Prvi prilaz je da se uspostave nacionalni programi za industriju 4.0, što su u najvećem broju primenjene industrijski razvijene zemlje. Njima se ovom pristupu se pridružila i Srbija koja kroz ovu konferenciju o industriji 4.0, međunarodnu konferenciju koja je organizirana 2016. govori stalno na ovoj temi. Na ovu temu i taj nacionalni program danas u svijetu je realizovan u 38 zemalja gdje se u stvari definiše takozvani integrisani indeks zrelosti koji ima neki 6 nivoa, od nivoa automatizacije na prvom nivou i prilagođavanje na zadnjem nivou. Sljedeći prilaz je da se u stvari prođe od postojeće poslovne prakse u organizaciji. Dakle, ovo je prvi prilaz odnosio na zemlju. Drugi prilaz govori o tome kako industriju 4.0 primijeniti u konkretnoj firmi. Dakle, tu se polazi od toga da se elementi industrije 4.0 koji danas evidentno ima 44 i oni manji ili viši u zavisnosti od nivoa složenosti organizacije, poslovnog modela, vrste proizvodnje i tako dalje se primjenjuju od minimum 18, kako istraživanje pokazuje, do maksimum 44 i tu imamo dva prijelaza koji se dijele na naučni i praktični. Naučni je zasnovan na najbolje tehnološkoj praksi s aspekta automatizacije, a ovaj praktični govori o tome kako primijeniti pojedinačne elemente industrije 4.0 u praksi, koji se odnose na cyber fizičke sisteme, na primjenu tehnika veštačke inteligencije i tako dalje. Treći prilaz govori o tome kako u stvari ocijeniti spremnost te industrije za posebne oblasti. Ovdje u svijetu su razvijeni posebni specifični prilazi za industriju 4.0 u dve važne oblasti. Vojna industrija i kosmička industrija. Dakle, baš ovo o čemu juče, danas i sutra uvaženi kolega Mijović sa svojim gostima iz zemlje iz inostranstva govori. Dakle, specifičnost se ogleda u tome da se u stvari ispunjavaju zahtjevi za proizvode koji dolaze iz ove industrije i onda se na osnovu njih grade aspekti različitih tehnologija i podržavaju različitim modelima informacijnih i komunikacijnih tehnologija, a tu su posebno važna dva elementa, to je aditivna proizvodnja ili brza izrada prototipa i ovi elektronski lanci vrednosti. Četvrti prilaz je ono što je za nas izuzetno važan, dakle, ovo izlaganje smo posvetili tome da utvrđujemo i određujemo spremnost naših malih i srednjih kompanija koje predstavljaju kičmu, dakle, industrije naše zemlje za primjenu modela industrije 4.0. Dakle, u ovakvim organizacijama, to pokazuju naše istraživanje u svijetu, su ti osnovne karakteristike koje definišu okvir ili, rekla bih, kontekst modela industrije 4.0 za njih. To su vizija, dakle, to su resursi i njihovo razumevanje i razmatranje za ovaj koncept, to je mapa puta ili model najbolje prakse sa elementima industrije 4.0 koji treba primijeniti organizaciji. Na kraju to je projekat koji ima sve karakteristike ozbiljnog prilaza od obuke preko upravljanja rizikom i primjene elemenata industrije 4.0 u praksi. Dakle, što se tiče zrelosti, možemo da kažemo da je to jedno pitanje o kojem smo sada govorili, međutim, postoji i drugi aspekt koji se danas u literaturi sreće i odnosi se na pojam spremnosti, a taj pojam govori o tome kakav je kvalitet ili stanje od čega se počinje. To je posebno važno za našu zemlju, zato sam to ovdje istakao, zato što mi, vezano za male i srednje organizacije, imamo vrlo raznoliki tehnološki nivo, ne samo s aspekta proizvodnih mašina, već i s aspekta automatizacije i kompjuterizacije u tim organizacijama. Dakle, od onih koji imaju visok nivo oba elementa do onih gdje u stvari to uopšte i ne postoji. Tako da i taj aspekt treba uzeti u obzir. Kako sada izgraditi model i kako na osnovu tog modela oceniti organizaciju i kako prići u realizaciju projekta Industrija 4.0 za konkretnu organizaciju. Dakle, treba definisati jedan kompleksni model koji će povezati ova dva elementa i na osnovu toga izgraditi kontekst za primjenu Industrije 4.0 u samoj organizaciji. Da bi se to uradilo, mora se uspostaviti odgovarajuća metrika koja se naziva tehnološki performansi, a koja se odnosi na sljedivost proizvoda, upravljanje procesima, prilagodljivost, cyber sigurnost i umrežavanje svih ovih elementa koji čine glavne komponente danas Industrije 4.0. Dakle, što se tiče realizacije koncepta u praksi, postoji nekoliko nivoa o kojima treba voditi računa kada se projekat Industrije 4.0 realizuje. To su nivo veze, konverzije, cyber nivo, konfiguracije i kognicije. Dakle, svi ti elementi čine ukupnu mrežu Industrije 4.0 za konkretnu organizaciju. Na primjer, ako govorimo o konkretnim industrijskim granama, evo primjera organizacije, proizvodne organizacije iz građevinarstva. Dakle, upravljanje proizvodnim tehnološkim procesima kroz takozvanu horizontalnu integraciju koja čini mreže vrednosti ili digitalnu integraciju na bazi end-to-end, dakle početak zahtjeva realizacija posla kroz inženjerski lanac vrednosti. I sa treće strane ta vertikalna integracija gdje su umreženi tehnološki sistemi koji podržavaju funkcionisanje građevinske industrije. I sada kako u cijeloj ovoj priči definisati model koji će konkretnu organizaciju naše zemlje oceniti za spremnost primjene koncepta Industrije 4.0 i pomoći da definiše ovaj projekat. Mi smo pošli od toga da definišemo nivo zrelosti kroz 5 nivoa, to je dakle onaj koji u Industriji 4.0 sasvim na početku do onoga koji na nivou 4 koji ima sve elemente ili većinu elementa Industrije 4.0 koji su primjenjeni u samoj organizaciji. Dakle, ti elementi se definišu i povezuju kroz odgovarajući projekat, a ocjena spremnosti se vrši kroz definisanje i određivanje koeficijenata kroz 9 različitih dimenzija, od strategije, kulture, liderstva, kupaca, dobavljača, proizvoda, tehnologija, zaposlenih, modela Industrije 4.0 do zakonskog okvira. Svi ti elementi predstavljaju ocjenu upitnika na osnovu čega se u stvari vrši proračun i određivanje zrelosti za svaku dimenziju ponaosob, od preko 5 nivoa Liketove skale, od toga da ništa nije primjenjeno, do toga da je u stvari sve primjenjeno da se stalno unapređuje. Na osnovu toga se dobije odgovarajuća karta koju ću pokazati na sljedećem slajdu. Dakle, polazi se od upitnika koji ima 84 pitanja, koji je definisan za karakteristike Industrije 4.0. Malo sam rekao, od 18 do 44 elementa za proizvodnu organizaciju. Mi smo to analizirali za 106, odnosno poslali smo 106 organizacija, dobili smo 49 odgovora i evo kako ti rezultati izgledaju. Prvo smo analizirali šta su teškoće za uspješnu primjenu Industrije 4.0 u našoj zemlji, Dakle, odmah najveći broj odgovora, skoro 50%, odnosi se na potrebne investicije u ceo projekat realizacije konkretne organizacije. Dakle, on je na prvom mjestu, zatim slede nedostatak stručne radne snage, nedostatak znanja i tako dalje. Dakle, ovo su nama bili orijentiri na osnovu koga dimenzionišemo i panele o kojima je profesor Mitrović govorio, koje smo do sada uložili 25 u našoj zemlji sa temama koje pokušavaju da ove prve barijere vezane za primjenu industrije 4.0 ljudima što više objasne u praksi. Dalje, sljedeća grupa pitanja odnosila se na činjenice vezane za industriju 4.0 u malim i srednjim organizacijama i to od toga da li organizacije su spremne, imaju barem osnovni investicijni plan za primjenu ovog projekta, do toga da li imaju primijenjene neke od elemenata ova 44 o kojima sam govorio u svojoj organizaciji. Dakle, opet je otprilike pola odgovori na jedno i na drugo pitanje da imaju ili nemaju, da jesu ili nisu spremni. Isto tako je isto važno definisati za koje funkcije organizacija u svojoj organizacijskoj strukturi najviše namerava da krene od primjene koncepta industrije 4.0. Svi praktično su rekli da bi najviše volili i najviše iskustva i znanja imaju u proizvodnji do ove ostale funkcije kao što je nabavka, prodaja, projektovanje, projektne tehnologije i tako dalje su izražene sa manjim procentom. Dakle, ovih 49 odgovora smo skupili i došli smo do rezultata koji su ovdje iskazani, koji govore o ovih 10 dimenzija realizacije projekta u samoj organizaciji i kao što ovdje možemo da zaključimo, dakle, na prvom mjestu je ona koja ima najviše uređene male i srednje organizacije sa aspekata odnosa sa kupcima, dakle 65%, zatim sa dobavljačima 72%, dakle skupljene informacije o proizvodima 84% i podrška kompjuterizacije tehnologije 61%. Dakle, to su oni najvažniji elementi koji čine okvir industrije 4 ili kontekst industrije 4.0. Želim da kažem da i rukovodstvo tih organizacija u najvećem procentu, preko 50%, prepoznaje značaj cijele ove priče. Dakle, možemo da zaključimo sljedeće, da u stvari na ovaj način, radeći predano na ovom projektu u našoj zemlji, Mašinski fakultet se pokazao kao nacionalni lider za definisanje programa i platforme za industriju 4.0 zajedno sa našim partnerima iz Privredne komore, da sektor i dalje predano radimo bez obzira na okolnosti u kojima se sada trenutno nalazimo i za 2 nedelje ćemo razvijati sljedeći panel u jednoj proizvodnoj organizaciji u Požegi, u Ingulu, u Požegi, koja u stvari predstavlja visokotehnološku organizaciju sa dosta elemenata industrije 4.0 već danas u praksi i da sve ove rezultate koje smo ovdje govorili pokušavamo i da kroz projekte koje fakultet realizujemo prikažemo rezultate istraživanja u projektima koje podržava Ministarstvo za nauku i tehnologiju. Eto za početak.
Hvala profesoru Majstoroviću na konciznom izlaganju, a kao što sam rekao, sada bi zamolio uvaženog kolegu profesora Dragana Đuričina da ekonomske aspekte platforme Industrije 4.0 izloži i da nastavimo sa radom. Profesor, izvolite.
Hvala profesore. Moram da kažem da je velika čast i zadovoljstvo da sam u prilici da radim sa ovim entuzijastama sa razlogom i da kao ekonomista, znamo da je ekonomija nauka u kontekstu koji treba da poboljša određene procese ili ako nije dobro postavljena da ih pogorša, zadužena upravo da podrži upravo takve vizije kao što je vizija primene rezultata i principa četvrte industrijske revolucije. Ja bih možda pošao od onoga gde je pri kraju svog izlaganja stao profesor Majstorović kada je rekao da je među privrednicima koji primenjuju rezultate industrije 4.0 i koji su svesni njenih mogućnosti, jedna od najvećih prepreka, jedno od najvećih ograničenja finansiranja. I finansiranje je uvek problem kada je ekonomski sistem neefikasan. Mi smo u situaciji da preko 40 godina u ekonomskoj ortodoksiji, u ekonomskoj doktrini vlada koncept neoliberalne ekonomije koja koristi takozvana 3+3 principa. To su principi deregulacije, privatizacije i liberalizacije kada su u pitanju ekonomske politike, a kada je u pitanju razvojni model, onda su to principi takozvanog ekonomskog fundamentalizma, principi akcionarskog kapitalizma i principi takozvane supply side ekonomije. Pokazalo se da ovaj kompot faktora nije efikasan. I pokazalo se, recimo, od 1974. godine do danas da je bilo preko 400 ekonomskih i finansijskih kriza, od kojih je jedna od najvećih bila 2008. godine, poznata kao velika recesija, iz koje se još nismo ni izvukli, a došao je crni labud u liku COVID-19 i konačno čovječanstvo je svesno da superinfekcije na bazi pandemija mikroba će biti ne samo zdravstvena, već i ekonomska realnost sveta. Jer ako imate karantin, ako imate ljude koji ne mogu da se kreću, moraju biti izolovani, vi zapravo imate kolaps ekonomije. Ovih dana čujemo da se po osnovu drugog talasa COVID-19 u Španiji, Francuskoj, Britaniji, a posljednjih dana i u Nemačkoj razmišlja o nacionalnom karantinu. Znači, vraćamo se u stanje marta meseca, a znamo šta se desilo u martu mesecu. Iz tih pretpostavki cela svetska ekonomija, sa izuzetkom Kine, je danas u značajnom padu. Recimo, Sjedinjene Američke Države projekcije do kraja godine oko 20% je pad bruto domaćeg proizvoda. Francuska preko 20%, Nemačka 12 do 15%, Italija 25%, Španija 26-7%. I to su, rekao bih, optimističke procene. S druge strane, ekonomija koja je bazirana na neoliberalnom modelu je ne samo neodrživa, puna takozvanih spekulativnih balona, već je ta ekonomija dovela do ogromne devastacije prirodne sredine. Jer ta ekonomija se nije bavila na pravi način nečim što se u ekonomiji zove javna dobra i nije na pravi način transfernim cenama i cenama u senci regulisala zloupotrebu javnih dobara od strane privatnih preduzeća. Na kraju dana, sistem koji generiše gubitke, a to je, pokazalo se, neoliberalni model i koji funkcioniše na jednom skupu pravila koji sam pomenuo, kada dođe u krizu, funkcioniše sa sasvim drugim skupom pravila, koje oni koji žele da sačuvaju ugled ortodoksnog neoliberalnog modela zovu nekonvencionalne politike. Mi danas imamo ogromno štampanje novca. Od vremena početka COVID-19 u zapadnoj hemisferi procenjuje se da je između 20 i 25 hiljada milijardi dolara odštampano novca. Svetski bruto domaći proizvod je oko 80 hiljada milijardi dolara. Prema tome, vi ste povećali inflacioni pritisak jer nemate iza tog novca odgovarajuće robe i usluge. Pri tome, mnoge zemlje pate zbog nedostatka esencijalnih dobara, a naročito dobara koje su u domenu medicinske zaštite. Da ne pominjem klimatske promene, da ne pominjem ciljeve Organizacije Ujedinjenih nacija poznate kao SDGs 17, znači 17 ciljeva socijalnog i društvenog razvoja koji su doneseni 2015. godine i koji se do danas uopšte nisu ostvarivali, iako je za njihovu realizaciju potrebno 10 do 15 hiljada milijardi dolara godišnje na svetskom nivou. Kolika je akumulacija koju ova invalidna privreda, zasnovana na neoliberalnom modelu rasta, a taj neoliberalni model rasta kao osnovu ima takozvani linearni model proizvodnje. Koliko se iz tog modela može izvući akumulacije za finansiranje, prestrukturiranje ekonomije i za saniranje negativnih posledica prethodnog industrijskog razvoja, čija je najdramatičnija posledica vezana za takozvane klimatske promene. Otprilike 0,7% na godišnjem nivou od 80.000 triliona dolara se može izdvojiti za finansiranje prestrukturiranja ekonomije i za saniranje negativnih posledica prethodnog industrijskog rasta. Otuda nije slučajno što su se umni ljudi iz ove kontekstualne naučne oblasti koju zovemo ekonomija, koji ima zadatak da pruži kontekst da se racionalni procesi, kao što su procesi koje su pomenuli moji prethodnici, profesori Majstorović i moj blizak, ako mogu tako da kažem, prijatelj, dekan Mašinskog fakulteta, ti procesi se ne mogu primeniti bez finansiranja. Kako pronaći rešenje? Kažem, umne glave sveta, između ostalog i Rimski klub i Svetska akademija nauke i umetnosti u saradnji sa Ujedinjenim nacijama rade na novom modelu rasta i platformi za vođenje ekonomskih politika. Imam čast da sam deo tog tima i naši rezultati, odnosno naši predlozi će biti krajem novembra meseca prezentirani u Ujedinjenim nacijama. Normalno sa mnogim rešenjima koje smo u poslednjih nekoliko godina definisali u okviru naših skupova vezanih za industriju 4.0. Samo kratko da kažem, suština je cirkularna ekonomija kao model rasta, primjena principa industrije 4.0 kao način prestrukturiranja i obezbeđenje finansiranja preko nečega što se zove Green QE, zeleno kvantitativno olakšanje. Za inženjere samo da dam jedno pojašnjenje. QE je način štampanja novca kojim centralne banke razvijenih zemalja, ali bogami i Kine, koriste u uslovima da poboljšaju likvidnost privrednih subjekata kada popucaju baloni zbog strukturnih neravnoteža. Novac se do sada štampao i odlazi u banke i druge finansijske posrednike. Od onih 25.000 triliona, izvinite, 25.000 milijardi dolara ili 25 trilijona dolara, otprilike 82 do 85% je otišlo u finansijski sektor. Finansijski sektor pravi balone. A onda kada popucaju baloni, centralna banka pumpa balon. Malo dobije stanovništvo, to se definiše kao helikopter money, malo dobiju neka preduzeća, malo dobije medicinski sektor, ali na strukturiran i organizovan način novac ne ide tamo gde treba. On ide ono što je zapravo lobistički sektor, sektor koji je zloupotrebio neoliberalni model. Nije slučajno. Čuli ste svi za Rand korporaciju. Rand korporacija je prva skrenula pažnju, iako radi za američke obavještajne službe, prva je skrenula pažnju kolike su ekonomske posljedice rata u Vijetnamu i pokazala koliko je to jedan besmislen projekat. Rand korporacija je pre nekog vremena izašla sa podatkom da su ljudi sa Wall Streeta, znači ljudi koji su u finansijskom sektoru, koji su sa berze, usisali 54.000 milijardi dolara ili 54 trilijona dolara od 1974. godine kada se u reaganizmu i tačerizmu počinje primjenjivati neoliberalni model, usisali i to je ona manjina u svetskom sistemu od 1%. Dakle, 1% stanovništva sa finansijskih berzi je usisao 54.000 milijardi dolara od 1974. godine do danas. To je neproduktivan novac. Rešenje je da se umesto da se emituje novac, pošto centralna banka u ekonomskoj teoriji ima neograničenu moć emisije novca. Ona emisija novca samo mora imati robno pokriće ili mora imati pokriće projekata koji imaju buduće vrednosti. Da umesto da se emituje novac za pokriće dubioza finansijskog sektora, odnosno za izvlačenje novca, prvo nekome date novac, onda on to izvuče i onda je bogat. Znači, predviđa se emisija novca za industriju 4.0, za cirkularnu ekonomiju, za ekonomiju koja je carbon free i za ekonomiju koja će dati potrebne inovacije u domenu vakcina, u domenu lekova i u domenu opšte zdravstvene zaštite. Jer ljudi su najveće bogatstvo planete, ili bi bar tako trebalo da bude. Dakle, procena je da negde oko 15.000 milijardi dolara godišnje može da ide preko centralnih banaka najrazvijenijih zemalja, a da zemlje koje ne spadaju u nivo te razvijenosti preko sistema prava specijalnih učenja koje postoje u Međunarodnom monetarnom fondu dobiju od emitovanog novca 1% koji bi bio upravo novi novac, novi impuls ne samo industrijskom razvoju, već i razvoju ekonomije kao celine. Mnogo je bolje štampati novac i finansirati pametne projekte od kojih čovječanstvo ima koristi, nego štampati novac da bi se održavala takozvana makroekonomska ravnoteža svedena na kontrolu inflacije, odnosno na inflaciju od 2 do 3%. Najveći umovi ekonomije, nekoliko Nobelovaca, pre svega Joseph Stiglitz, je podržao ovu koncepciju. Među mladim ili relativno mladim ekonomistima, kao što je Marijana Mazzucato, koja je inače u Evropskoj uniji glavni strateg za upravo primjenu rešenja industrije 4.0, su takođe na ovoj liniji. I normalno front ljudi sa ovom orijentacijom se povećava. Rezultat ovoga su zelene obveznice, zeleni krediti, olakšanja za banke koji daju zelene kredite u smislu da njihova rezervisanja nisu tako rigorozna kao što su u slučaju konvencionalnih tehnologija i tako dalje. Razna poreska olakšanja u slučaju reinvestiranja slobodnog profita u zelene tehnologije. Normalno, ovo sve zahteva ogromnu koordinaciju. Neoliberalni model je baziran na fundamentalizmu tržišta, što znači da tržište šta je reguliše, ali ove stvari tržište ne može da reguliše. Zato, kao što je i profesor Majstorović rekao, ovdje je potrebno uvesti novu platformu za vođenje ekonomskih politika koju zovemo heterodoksno, koja koristi nevidljivu ruku tržišta, ali koristi vidljivu ruku države preko industrijskih politika. Industrijske politike se formulišu za sektore, pre svega egzistencijalnih dobara, jer mi sa superinfekcijama, pandemijama smo relativizirali značaj globalnih lanaca snabdevanja i globalizacije, jer mnogo toga ćemo morati sami da proizvodimo i da trošimo na lokalnom tržištu, jer nismo deo globalnih lanaca snabdevanja. Više niko nije, pa nismo ni mi. Takođe, treba forsirati grane sa takozvanim komparativnim prednostima i konkurentskim prednostima, odnosno grane razmenjivih proizvoda koji supstituišu uvoz, povećavaju izvoz. Postoje mnoga rešenja na tragu ovih ideja, koje su dovedene do detalja. Gde se nalazi Srbija, i time bih završio, mislim da sam malo odužio, ali uvek u društvu inženjera ja dobijem inspiraciju. I moram vam reći, bavio sam se još uvek konsultingom od 1990. godine. Najviše sam učio od inženjera. A principijalno dosta sam čitao, pa mi je ekonomija bliska, ali ako ne može to, ako ne mogu neki predlozi inženjera da se primene na principe, onda ti ekonomski principi nemaju smisla. I možda sam poboljšao svoju analitičku pamet sarađujući sa ovakvim ljudima. Jer znate kako, mnogi kažu ekonomija je igračka u rukama političara. Da, do nekog trenutka, ali ako možete da je povežete sa nekim drugim oblastima, a tu je svakako inženjerstvo jedna od najbitnijih oblasti, onda imate sinergiju. Gde se nalazi Srbija u ovom? Nažalost, svet se nalazi u 4. industrijskoj revoluciji, a Srbija do skoro nije bila ni u 3. Odnosno, počela se sa primjenom interneta, povezivanjem i tako dalje, ali ne tako masovno. U ovom slučaju, zemlja koja je prošla kroz borbu za nasleđe bivše Jugoslavije, kroz ratove, sankcije i tako dalje, i lutanja u vođenju tranzicijalnih politika posle 2000. godine. To je veliki problem. Moj kolega, profesor Jurčić, predsjednik Saveza ekonomista Hrvatske, on kaže, znate, Jugoslavija nikada se nije našla ni na kraju druge industrijske revolucije, iako smo mi u industriji imali i strateške tehnologije, na primjer nuklearnu, i mnoge oblasti koje su bile veoma značajne, koje su govorile o ubrzanoj industrializaciji u jednom periodu. Međutim, od 90. godina Srbija je u procesu deindustrializacije, koja je posljedica geopolitičkih promjena koje su se desile, raspada država i svega što je ostalo iza toga, i lutanja u razvojnoj strategiji. Međutim, industrija 4.0, obzirom da bazira na univerzalnoj konektivnosti i praktično na novim industrijama koje su vođene, povezane, internet, je prilika za Srbiju da preskočimo kašnjenje u 3. industriji i neka kašnjenja koja postoje još uvijek u 4. industriji. Najvažnije znanje u toj oblasti u ovom trenutku je koncepcijsko znanje. I zato kažem, moje kolege Mitrović i Majstorović rade vizionarski posao, jer upravo ta konceptualna znanja mi pokušavamo da što bolje aglomeriramo i primenimo na što veći broj slučajeva. I poslednja stvar, Bili smo na dan od formiranja Competence centra za industriju 4.0 sa svetskim ekonomskim programom. Prvo je trebalo bude u novembru, 17. novembra je trebalo da se objavi 2019. godine, onda je bilo početkom aprila, došla korona i to je odloženo. Ali mislim, i to je sve u saradnji sa vladom Republike Srbije. Ako se i to uradi, da dobijemo institucionalnu podršku na ove koncepcijske platforme, mislim da se može puno uraditi kako bi ovaj gap u razvoju i ekonomskog modela, a i inženjerskih procedura i tehnologija što pre bio zatvoren. Hvala.
Hvala lepo profesoru Đuričinu na vrlo inspirativnom i celovitom izlaganju koje pruža mogućnost za ozbiljnu diskusiju. Kako sve ove promjene i rezultate promjena vidi analiza i istraživanje i ispitivanje Privredne komore Srbije, a rađena su na sreću i šta je vidljivo, šta nije, ja bih zamolio koleginicu Vidu Đagić da izloži, pa da onda kolegu Vukadinovića kao primjer jedne sjajne kompanije i njihova iskustva čujemo. Vidu ne vidim. Evo je, bravo, Vido. Dobar dan i...
Dobar dan, moje poštovanje svima. Nije lako biti govornik posle uvaženih mojih profesora i profesora Đuričina i naravno veliki izazov jeste da pričam i pre nekoga ko živi sa ovom temom svaki dan, ali ono što je profesor Đuričin postavio kao početnu tezu gde se nalazi Srbija i kako da premostimo upravo taj jaz između ljudi i tehnologija, čini mi se da je sada jedan od velikih izazova sa kojima se suočavamo i ekonomskih i društvenih uopšte izazova. S druge strane, naše ekonomske izazove koji su postojali pre ove zdravstvene krize, ova zdravstvena kriza je samo, kako da kažem, još više produbila i zapravo na neke stvari nam ukazala je da moramo menjati biznis modele i da zapravo jedan od dobrih alata jeste digitalna transformacija, odnosno digitalni alati, ili ja to zovem digitalna tranzicija, koja će značajno biti ubrzana upravo usled posledica krize. No, ono što bih ja sada želela da podelim sa vama su rezultati jednog istraživanja koje je sprovedeno zahvaljujući ovde uvaženom profesoru Đuričinu i kontaktu koje je on napravio u okviru jednog evropskog projekta koji se zove Aspekti razvoja inteligentnog, održivog i inkluzivnog društva, društvene, tehnološke, inovacijske mreže u zapošljavanju i digitalnoj ekonomiji. I to je deo istoimenog projekta Horizon 2020 koje je modelirao i, da kažemo, vodio Corvinus univerzitet iz Ljubljane, gde smo mi imali, izvinjavam se, iz Budimpešte, a gde smo mi kao zemlja upravo, zahvaljujući profesoru Đuričinu, imali prilike da koristeći mrežu regionalnih privrednih komora i Privredne komore Srbije sprovedemo to istraživanje. Pre svega, značajno je što ovo istraživanje iz 3 razloga. Prvo, ovakvih studija je malo i ja pozdravljam napore profesora Majstorovića u okviru razvoja i modela za procenu digitalne zrelosti i istraživanja koje je sproveo na jednom uzorku upravo na malih i srednjih preduzeća. Drugi razlog što zapravo ovo je bio početni korak za situacionu analizu u Srbiji kada je u pitanju industrija 4.0 i ono što je bilo važno, u prošloj godini se donosila i industrijska politika, tako da je bilo važno da se na argumentovan način sa mišljenjem privrede konkretno skrene pažnja na okvir za bržu primjenu industrije 4.0 i naravno ono što je uvek važno, a to je da možemo da se poredimo sa industrijama sa kojima, da kažem, takmičimo i na nacionalnom, ali i na drugim tržištima. Znači, to su naše, ali s druge strane koji su nam i partneri, kao što su privrede Mađarske, Rumunije i Slovačke. Kada ova studija bude u celosti finalizovana, mi ćemo imati prilike da na jednoj konferenciji razgovaramo o, da kažemo, sveukupnim rezultatima ovog istraživanja. Ja samo želim da skrenem pažnju na 3 značajna njena dela. To su procena modela digitalne zrelosti, zapravo koje je rađeno na bazi Deloitteovog modela samoprocene. Zatim, u drugom delu, šta su to naše firme prepoznale kao najvažnije pokretačke snage i barijere u primjeni industrije 4.0 i na kraju da vidimo šta su to njihovi stavovi kada je u pitanju nacionalna tehnološka platforma za industriju 4.0. Da kažem da je u ovom istraživanju učestvovalo oko 123 preduzeća, znači odziv je bio negde preko 70% ili 78% od ukupnog broja mapiranih preduzeća. Ovo je kvalitativno istraživanje i 85% preduzeća je direktno iz proizvodnje, što je veoma važno. Oko 70% preduzeća čine velika i srednja preduzeća. Tako da možda ovi rezultati negde mogu da nadograde istraživanje koje je radio profesor Majstorović. Oko 40% ispitanika ili odgovora su dali vlasnici ili generalni direktori, što je takođe veoma važno. Kada govorimo o rezultatu, odnosno proceni digitalne zrelosti ili o samoproceni digitalne zrelosti, koje su oko 57% preduzeća je reklo da se nalazi ili izjavilo da se nalazi u visokoj digitalnoj zrelosti, što znači, samo da osvetlim, Deloitteov model digitalne zrelosti naspram onoga što je profesor Majstorović pokazao, bazira na 5 dimenzija i to na strategiji, na tehnologiji, na operacijama, na organizaciji, kulturi i klijentima, odnosno kupcima. Dalje je bilo veoma važno da od ovih preduzeća, 57% preduzeća, se upravo fokusiramo na njih i da dublje istražujemo, jer zapravo oni su lideri koji predvode industriju 4.0 u primjeni i to su uglavnom, da napomenem, domaće kompanije, a sa druge strane procenili smo da su to preduzeća koja su najspremnija ili najsposobnija da kapitalizuju mogućnosti koje pruža tehnologija. Tako da kada govorimo o daljem istraživanju, oni su procenili da su pokretači industrije 4.0, da kažemo, 2 ključna faktora. Prvi je eksterni i to je tržište, znači smatraju da je industrija 4.0 posledica zahteva klijenata, pre svega zahteva za unapređenje kvaliteta, za unapređenje zadovoljstva potrošača i za ono što je sve više za personalizaciju proizvoda ili usluga i za bolju tržišnu pozicioniranost, odnosno za bolju tržišnu konkurenciju. Drugi faktor je interni faktor i usmeren je unutar preduzeća i fokusira se na troškove, fokusira se na finansijske efekte i na praćenje. Znači, on obuhvata unapređenje efikasnosti, smanjenje troškova, pre svega kroz smanjenje greški, unapređenje fleksibilnosti, kroz obezbeđenje pouzdanog funkcionisanja i merenja performansi u realnom vremenu. Znači, govorimo o onome što su istakle same firme. S druge strane, one kažu da barijere industrije 4.0 vide na prvom mestu u nedostatku spremnosti za saradnju na nivou lanca vrednosti. Malo pre je profesor pomenuo da su globalni lanci vrednosti posle ove velike zdravstvene krize na neki način pokidani i da zapravo imamo uspostavljanje novih lanaca vrednosti. Zatim, nedostatak sposobnosti unutar samog preduzeća koje pre svega se ogleda u neadekvatnoj organizaciji procesa, u neadekvatnim primjeni određenih standarda, neadekvatnim tehnologijama, zatim u nedostatku adekvatnog planiranja i nedostatku potrebnih kompetencija u preduzeću. Na trećem mestu takođe firme ističu važnost, odnosno barijeru u ograničenoj dostupnosti finansijskih sredstava. Ono što je takođe vrlo interesantno kada se posmatra ovo istraživanje na nivou lanca vrednosti, vrlo je važno da osvetlimo da je najlošije ocenjen deo koji se tiče logistike, koji se tiče elektronskih nabavki i koji se čak tiče i onoga upravljanja ljudskim resursima. Kada govorimo o tome šta su firme rekle koje su najvažnije oblasti primjene Industrije 4.0, na prvom mestu one su istakle da je to automatizacija proizvodnih procesa, zatim digitalizacija, tek na trećem mestu vide da je to cloud computing, zatim Internet of Things, big data i tako dalje. Što znači da negde potvrđuje onu tezu koju je izrekao profesor Đuričin, da je pitanje u kojoj se mi fazi nalazimo. Ali cilj ovog istraživanja, industrijske revolucije, cilj ovog istraživanja nije bio da mapiramo fazu u kojoj se nalazi naša industrija, već da identifikujemo gde smo i šta je to što treba da uradimo i kako na najbolji mogući način da iskoristimo ono što nam pruža nove, da kažemo, pametna tehnologija kako bi premostili upravo ovaj jaz. Takođe je vrlo interesantno u tom ekosistemu ili novo uspostavljenom ekosistemu gde, da kažemo, posmatramo 4 ključna igrača, na jednom mestu je država, zatim akademska i naučno-istraživačka zajednica i kupci i dobavljači, na koji način firme vide šta je to što je njima potrebno sa aspekta podrške ili šta smatraju značajnim sa aspekta podrške digitalnoj transformaciji. Pa ono što je možda iznenađujuće, ali za mene nije, oni smatraju da podrška države u procesu digitalne transformacije je manje značajna za preduzeća u Srbiji koja se digitalno transformišu u odnosu na ostale stakeholdere. Svega 60% ispitanika smatra da je vladina podrška važna, ali od vlade očekuju da reši pitanje ili da kažem, ili da se značajno više uključi u pogledu rešavanja finansijskih pitanja ili finansijskih problema. Ono što je vrlo interesantno da veoma značajno smatraju podršku akademske zajednice i to čak 78,5% ispitanika smatra da je podrška univerziteta i istraživačkih instituta veoma važna i njihova podrška je bitna kada su u pitanju ne samo obrazovanje, znači ljudski resursi, već i direktno uključivanje u rešavanje tehnoloških pitanja. Ono što je takođe interesantno je na pitanje kada bi želeli da dobiju odgovore na određena pitanja ili da steknu znanje i obrazovanje o Industriji 4.0, kome bi se obratili, na prvom mestu oni bi se obratili univerzitetima i naučno-istraživačkim institucijama, na drugom mestu internetu, a na trećem mestu dobavljačima. Tako da je ovo, smatram, veoma važno da se i univerzitet, odnosno pojedini fakulteti postave tamo ili da kažem da se pozicioniraju sa određenom podrškom kako to naša industrija očekuje. Najveći deo i najveći značaj oni pridaju dobavljačima Industrije 4.0 i da kažemo kupcima i tržištu, što naravno potvrđuje i onu malo pre postavljenu tezu. Takođe, deo ovog istraživanja je bio i pitanje na delovanje nacionalnih tehnoloških platformi. Malo pre je profesor Majstorović pomenuo da 37 zemalja u svetu ima svoje nacionalne tehnološke platforme. U Srbiji postoje pokušaj da se i inicijative da se uspostavi nacionalna tehnološka platforma. S tim u vezi, 76 učesnika u istraživanju nije upoznato sa delovanjem nacionalne tehnološke platforme, jer je i nema, a 15% firmi oni zapravo nisu dali odgovor. Što znači, sve ovo odgovori na ovo pitanje ukazuju da firme jako dobro prate šta se to dešava u okruženju kada je industrija 4.0 u pitanju. Na pitanje da li je vaše preduzeće deo neke platforme ili nacionalne tehnološke platforme, oko 15% preduzeća je odgovorilo da je deo nacionalne tehnološke platforme, što je, da kažemo, i rezultat konkretan onih aktivnosti rada koje zajedno sprovodi već 3-4 godine i o kome je pričao profesor Majsturović, Mašinski fakultet uz podršku Privredne komore Srbije i regionalnih privrednih komora i samih kompanija koje moramo da priznamo da su u ovom procesu uključene sa preko 65%. Tako da, znači, to su neki ključni rezultati ovog istraživanja i zapravo mi vidimo da ono što jeste nama činiti, a to je da postavimo određeni okvir ili određene instrumente ili određene mehanizme, mi je vidimo kroz nacionalnu tehnološku platformu koja bi pružila podršku da se ostvari sinergija između kompanija, nauke, javnog sektora, da se pronađu održiva rešenja za izazove digitalne transformacije sa kojima se suočavamo, odnosno da se olakša sprovođenje digitalne transformacije u sektoru industrije u Srbiji. I ono što zapravo je veoma važno, komora ima, pogotovo komora glavnog grada, i ovdje želim da ispravim našeg gospodina Stojanovića koji je najavljivao učesnike ove konferencije. Ja sam pomoćnik direktora Privredne komore Beograda kao jednog od organizacionih delova komorskog sistema u okviru Privredne komore Srbije, koja je i koordinirala ovo istraživanje i koja ima retku priliku i retku šansu da, s obzirom da je Beograd centar, kako mi to kažemo, poslovne zajednice, akademske zajednice, naučno-istraživačke zajednice, ali javnog sektora, ali i novih, da kažemo, kompanija, novih koje primenjuju nove pametne tehnologije, da upravo pronađe tu nišu i taj okvir kako da zajedno sa njima razvijamo ekosistem znanja i inovacija sa ciljem da olakšamo transfer znanja i inovacija, odnosno bržu i efikasniju primjenu novih pametnih alata ili da olakšamo digitalnu tranziciju u lancu vrednosti. I ja ću sa ovim završiti. Hvala na pažnji.
S jedne strane, kažem hvala uvaženoj koleginici Vidi Đagić, imali smo priliku da iz ova 3 dosadašnja izlaganja čujemo koliko visok domet koji je deo akademske zajednice učinio na implementaciji jednog novog koncepta funkcionisanja globalnog sveta i sad smo ishvatili koliko sa globalnog mora da pređemo na regionalni pa i lokalni način funkcionisanja, snabdevanja i tako dalje. S jedne strane, a s druge strane i napor Privredne asocijacije da sve to što je urađeno bude vidljivo kod privrede, rezultati nisu onakvi kakvi bi želeli da budemo. I naravno teško je sve to uprosečavati, ali postoji kompanija koja je jedna od vodećih i ja bi sad molio kolegu Vojina Vukadinovića da kao primer odlične prakse iznese iskustvo metalca, pa da onda stvorimo uslove za diskusiju. Vojne, jel se čujemo?
Čujemo se, hvala. Hvala na pozivu. Pa, evo, divno je nadovezati se na entuzijaste, kako ste rekli. To je važno prvo da se družimo da bi nešto stvorili. Zanimljivo je da od svake firme, pa i od metalca se zahteva u ovoj industrializaciji da postanemo tehnološki, da kažemo inovatori. To je ono što do sad smo bili kao najbolji u nečemu, recimo proizvodnji posuđa, sad treba postanemo tehnološka firma. Mislim, taj izazov je praktično pred svakom organizacijom. Ovih dana smo svedoci da su škole pred izazovom da postanu tehnološke organizacije. Pa sam se ja malo tražići po Amazonu šta je popularno na temu 4.0 naletao na samo jedan izvor gde se, nemački izvor, gde se pominje organizacija 4.0. Zanimljivo je da se uopšte taj termin niti pojavljuje na engleskom govornom području, niti na nekom širem, da kažemo, na pretrazi na Google. A najčešće jedna firma kao Metalac ima najveće muke da sprovede unapređenja zbog kupaca, zbog dobavljača, zbog korone i tako dalje. Najviše zbog toga što organizacija ima nasleđene manire komunikacije. I opet jedan zanimljiv detalj, postoji jedan zakon, Conway's Rule, odnosno Conwayov zakon iz 1968. kaže organizacija kad treba da stvori neki novi dizajn, ona otprilike kopira svoj komunikacioni model. I ako ne promenimo komunikacioni model, često ne možemo promenimo ni. A najčešći moj problem, da pošto sam direktor razvoja u fabrici Metalac, odnosno kompaniji Metalac, evo rekao sam jednu grešku, fabrici Metalac, ali tako je vi najviše poznajete, ali to je velika grupa, 2200 ljudi, 15 preduzeća koja je odlučila da se fragmentira u nekom trenutku na holding, da bi učinila svoj razvoj bržim, da bi nastali spin-offovi, novi razvojni poduhvati, što se i desilo. Sad ima veliku potrebu da se centralizuje, odnosno potrebu da ujedini, a ja bih rekao da orkestrira fine, da kažemo, informacije iz svog procesa, da bi izašla u susret kupcu, pod jedan, i da bi izašla u susret ovim novim izazovima koji su se desili. I kao direktor razvoja od 2016. imam osjećaj da je jako teško napraviti komunikaciju. Zašto? Zato što u velikoj firmi koja je fokusirana na ostvarivanje finansijskih rezultata morate ustanoviti novi rečnik, novi leksikon pojmova koji su odjedanput novi, pre 10 godina nisu postojali. Profesor Đuričin je odradio prosvetiteljski rad u Metalcu zadnjih 10 godina i pominjao neke teme koje verovatno su sad tek postale aktuelne, a mi to slušamo srećom već neko vreme u Metalcu. I svaki put su nam prirodnije, mislim, navikavamo se. Mislim, mogu da kažem da merim svoju grupu kolega da se navikavaju na neke termine. Jedan od tih termina da je jedina vrednost u našem sad okruženju, a mi to znamo već na našim radionicama, da je to mobilnost. Da to više nije ni energija, ni neki, da kažemo, nego faktor vreme, odnosno mobilnost da se nešto uradi jako brzo, da se prilagodimo. I moj fokus ovde trenutno u kompaniji Metalac je da naše procese povežemo, orkestriramo, da ih učinimo pa i transparentnim i u realnom vremenu. Skoro sa profesorom Vidosavom Majstorovićem sam i istakao da taj problem realnog vremena je suštinski problem možda i ovih svih industrijskih revolucija. Nešto što nije bilo bitno da li će zakasniti jedan dan, danas je bitno da li će zakasniti jedan sat. Kupci su naviknuti na to i mi smo kao možda, ja mislim, najbolja laboratorija za eksperimente u državi Srbiji, pošto se protežemo i kroz proizvodni sektor i kroz retail, da kažemo, sektor, opet na inicijativu, da kažemo, i profesora Đuričina i zbog jedne potrebe koja je vladala u tom trenutku, od 2016. naveli da nam je važan digitalni sektor i negde smo i naveli ciljeve da je digitalna divizija nešto novo što treba da stvorimo. Koliko god to bilo i neobično za Metalac, mi smo počeli to da komuniciramo. Ja mislim da još uvek lutamo šta je to digitalna divizija u našoj kompaniji, ali da smo na vreme počeli, mislim, sigurno ćemo na vreme nešto i uraditi. Za sad se fokusiramo na izazove koje industrija 4.0 ne spominje tako direktno, ali jedan od metoda merenja jesu kupci. i nas su kupci jako iznenadili velikim skokom porudžbina preko online-a. Ceo naš sistem je postao, a to nije samo naša proizvodnja, nego i naša maloprodaja, pa naši online kapaciteti da komuniciramo preko društvenih mreža, preko naše online prodavnice i kako da zadovoljimo naše kupce, to je sve se uvećalo jedno, pa mislim da je minimum jedno 5 puta tokom perioda karantina, tokom prolećnih meseci. Izazvalo izvesno i nezadovoljstvo naših kupaca zato što nismo bili na visini zadatka kod svih. Znamo da su mnogi naši dobavljači bili na izazovima, pa nekad ni na visini zadatka. I sad smo svedoci da nam organizacije kao što su škole, zdravstvo i tako dalje, ponekad nisu na visini zadatka. Ja, kao elektroinženjer koji nije otišao u Kanadu ili u Ameriku ili tako negde, niti se usudio da se isključivo bavi softverom, ja sam ostao u kompaniji koja je na neki način, može neko reći da je to tako namerno da sam učinio, ali sam u stvari učinio izbor da je to potencijal kompanija koja može da napravi sudar sa potrošačima na velikom nivou. I taj izazov Amerikanaca koji kažu scale it or fail it je veliki izazov za metalac da napravi digitalnu diviziju. Kada spominjete industriju 4.0, svi zamišljaju robote i automatizaciju. Ja sam završio automatizaciju, ali nisam siguran da smo pomerili znanja ovako kako je profesor Vidosav Majstorović rekao, koliko ima detalja u industriji 4.0, mislim da je najveći problem u tom nazivu industrija 4.0. I mislim da se i složimo oko toga da industrijski sektor u svetu i taj njegov bruto društveni proizvod, odnosno njegov učešće je jako malo. Odnosno, ja ne znam da li je 1/6 ili 1/5 na globalnom nivou. Sve ostalo su usluge. U tim uslugama sve se, ajde da kažemo da je 4/5, u tim uslugama se sad sve promenilo. Odnosno, načini pružanja usluga se promenilo i mislim da je šansa sad za digitalnu diviziju metalac još veća, ali je hrabro izrečena ta konstatacija. Profesor Đuričin zna da je dao on najveće afirmacije i najveće cifre je dao za našu budućnost projekcije, a ja bih opet ponovio nešto što smo opet naučili ovde. Kada se definiše strategija, ako je onaj poslednji, da kažemo, čovek u firmi, odnosno čovjek, kažemo, neko koga ćemo pitati, a nije baš iz najviše hijerarhije, ako ga pitamo šta je strategija, on ako ne zna da je komunicira, najverovatnije se ta strategija neće ni ostvariti i to nekako mi liči na ovo Conwayov zakon. Ako nemamo taj komunikacijni model u firmi, neće se ni desiti ništa, odnosno najverovatnije će se desiti ono što je od uvek i bilo. Pa, od svih ovih problema koje je Vida iznela, mi smo učestvovali u toj anketi, ja mogu da se prisjećam pre jedno koliko godinu dana, da smo imali, malo više možda, da smo imali takva pitanja u kojima morate budete hrabri da kažete i ono što jeste. Mislim da imamo šansu da popravimo i da metalac bude primjer i ja bih poželeo da još neka konferencija se desi u metalcu, pored ove koja je bila u industriji 4.0, pored robotizacije. Mi smo i kupili neke robote posle toga i desilo se da smo stvarno sve što se desi i što se entuzijasti druže, bit će nešto. Mislim da će ovako, tako da za svaku pohvalu je entuzijazam Mašinskog fakulteta, eto. Ja to moram da kažem zato što je vama lakše, vas je više, a nas u kompaniji je manje. Pa treba nam svaka pomoć profesora, treba pomoć Privredne komore, jer edukacija ovde je, mislim, suštinski problem. Eto. Mogu bi da vam ispričam još šta mi sve radimo, ali možda sam izneo otprilike jedan kratak. Možda sam predstavio metalac. Eto. Hvala.
Hvala, Vojne. Kolega Vukadinović me inspirisao da sada iznesem jednu hipotezu. On je sve vreme govorio o nečemu novom, o problemima sa kojima se jedna savremena, tehnološki napredna kompanija bavi, a nije pomenuo ključnu reč. tvrdim, samoučenje. Svi smo, i da nije pandemije, pred novim izazovima gde odgovora ni u jednoj od publikovanih knjiga pa ni na internetu nema. Svi tragamo i dakle ovo je nova platforma, nova paradigma, novo vreme. Nema univerzalnih odgovora, sve je nekako kroz obrazovanje kroz koje smo mi prošli bilo drugačije i znalo se kako modifikovati svojstva materijala, kako od nekog materijala napraviti proizvod i tako dalje, a sada se odjednom mnogo novih faktora od kojih su neki potpuno novi ili kojih u knjigama iz kojih smo učili nema i zbog toga ova reč samoučenje mislim da je jedna od karakteristika vremena u kome živimo. I zbog toga mislim da je važno i za nas iz akademske zajednice to da shvatimo, neki su shvatili, evo, entuzijasti smo, neki ne shvataju da to što je znanje između korica ili nije važno, možda i na nekoj elektronskoj formi, više ne može samo na taj način da se prodaje, jer je i znanje i transfer znanja postalo jedna od usluga i konkurencija univerzitetima i fakultetima postaju i ozbiljne kompanije, jer i to je biznis gde mnogi vide svoju šansu da ponude što i često su uspešniji od klasičnih netransformisanih fakulteta i univerziteta i dakle to je jedna od karakteristika sa kojima živimo i tako dalje. Ima mnogo tih novosti o kojima samo možeš da nešto novo čuješ sa entuzijastima poput vas 4-5 i zato mislim da je važno da ne COVID, nego ove nove viruse novog poimanja života, sveta, njegovog funkcionisanja, dubljeg razumevanja, podelimo i sa drugima koji su takvi kao i mi, ne mire se sa postojećom stvarnošću i ne predaju pred problemima sa kojima se suočavamo i od toga koliko mi budemo inventivni da takav jedan pristup životu, načinu funkcionisanja, pre svega u domenu usluga, podelimo sa drugima, budemo uverljivi da u ovakav jedan koncept uvučemo što više ljudi, kao ekonomija na nivou države bit ćemo uspešniji. Mnogo vremena štedimo kada čujemo ove suptilne analize iz ugla ekonomije koje nam je izneo profesor Đuričin i potpuno se slažem sa ocenama kolege Vukadinovića. S druge strane, profesor Majstorović, ovaj tehničko-tehnološko proizvodni aspekt je više nego jasno osvetlio, a vide nam dala opet sve to viđeno u ogledalu kompanija koje nas ne razumeju dovoljno. Iz ovoga sad treba da izvučemo pouke šta dalje, ne samo danas na ovom panelu, nego možda i kad prespavamo i prođe nekoliko dana, šta u narednom periodu uraditi da bi efekti i rezultati ovog našeg entuzijazma bili još bolji. Ja prosto još jednom da podcrtam, inicijativa za formiranje studijskog programa, master studijskog programa Industrija 4.0, nije samo inicijativa Mašinskog fakulteta, nego i Vlade Republike Srbije i Digitalne Srbije, što govori da i na državnom nivou postoji svest ili deli svesti koliko je važno ne ostati samo konvencionalan, tradicionalan, nego razumeti dublja dešavanja u svetu i adekvatno reagovati. To je bila i finansijska podrška i mislim da je jako važno i to ću i u ponedeljak sa prvom generacijom studenata istaći i mislim da to je jedan put, ali i svi drugi smerovi koji sada nemaju mnogo ovih baš savremenih pristupa i obrazovanju, a i onome što nas iza toga čeka, mora da budu prožeti sa ovim. Sada pitam vas, ima li onih koji su voljni za diskusiju? Evo imamo još malo vremena pa da ga iskoristimo eventualno za pitanja. Evo ga kolega Stojanović, ako ne vidim dobro, pa onda ako je voljan da kaže šta misli.
Hvala profesore. Ja samo htio da kažem da meni ovo jako zanimljivo deluje i pohvalio bih inicijativu da pokrenete i master program za industriju 4.0. I čuli smo dosta o tom IoT, to jest Internet of Things, pa sad možda neke završne komentare, pošto imamo još jedno 5 minuta, od vaših gostiju generalno na tu temu, koliko je kod nas, pošto čuli smo koliko je prisutna industrija 4.0, ali to je kao, da kažemo, možda neki sledeći segment. Šta je sa internetom stvari i sa nekim dešavanjima koje su povezane sa to? Znači, i eto, to je moje pitanje, ako možete još jedno 5 minuta pa da završavamo. Hvala.
Evo možda profesor Majstorovića.
Dobro, hvala profesore, hvala kolega na ovakvom pitanju i ovakvoj inicijativi. Dakle, ja sam rekao da je termin industrija 4.0 uspostavljen 2011. Danas je 2020. godina i danas, kao što je kolega Vukadinović primetio, taj termin industrija 4.0 je toliko rasprostranjen i toliko primenjen u različitim oblastima, tako da govorimo, on je pomenuo termin organizacija 4.0. Da ne govorimo o čitavom nizu drugih aspekata. Hoću da kažem da je, dakle, industrija 4.0 ušla u sve privredne, proizvodne, uslužne grane delovanja, a vi ste mogli da vidite u mom izlaganju da sam rekao da je jedan od ključnih elemenata industrije 4.0 ovaj internet stvari. Dakle, internet stvari je ta nova tehnologija na osnovu koje se bazira koncept industrije 4.0 i to je jedna jako široka i vrlo važna tema, tako da možda bi kolegi Mijoviću preporučio da sledeća konferencija bude sa temom sa aspekta ovoga o čemu vi govorite sledeći korak, a to bi bio taj internet stvari. Dakle, vrlo važna oblast i lepo ste to uočili, podržavamo da naše dalje komunikacije i saradnje u ovoj oblasti nastavimo kroz taj pravac djelovanja koji bi mogla da bude osvetljen na novi način, kao što se počeli danas.
Bravo profesoru Majstoroviću, i profesor Đurić nije voljan da iznese svoj stav.
I ja mislim da je odlično pitanje. Ja ću poći od koncepata koji su vezani za možda najveći autoritet iz oblasti koju ja pripadam, oblasti strategijskog menadžmenta, profesora Michaela Portera, koji je napravio u Harvard Business Review jedan članak koji nosi naslov Internet of Everything. Znači ne Internet of Thing, nego Internet of Everything, povezujući proizvodni lanac sa učenjem, istraživanjem i razvojem, medicinom i svim ostalim stvarima. To sve imponuje konceptu industrijskih politika. Znate, imate horizontalne, vertikalne, imate one koje su vezane za industrijske grane, one koje su podrška kao što su nauka, obrazovanje i tako dalje. Znači, dolazimo prema onome što se zove osnovno slobodno dobro industrijske revolucije 4.0. To je univerzalna konektivnost. Dakle, nekada su to bile druge stvari, danas je univerzalna konektivnost slobodno dobro. Ko to iskoristi, taj će se najbolje pozicionirati, taj će imati najveće efekte. Ako pogledate ovo što je Voja pomenuo, tehnološke firme, njihovi lideri, njihovi vlasnici, predsjednici danas, su bili ljudi koji su bili jako mobilni, oni su brzo reagovali na promjenu tehnološkog trenda. Toliko su brzo reagovali da nisu imali vremena da završe fakultete koje su počeli da studiraju. To je i za Muska, kao jednog od najmlađih, vezano, to je vezano normalno i za Billa Gatesa, to je vezano i za Bezosa. Znači, niko od njih nije završio fakultete, jer kad imate takvo tehnološko okruženje sa dobrom preduzetničkom idejom, ko će da čeka da dobije diplomu, nego odmah krenete u ono što Englezi zovu turning learning into returning. Dakle, da što pre znanje sa univerziteta primeniti. I tu je glavna stvar primjena. Ali nema primjene bez koncepcije. Znači, prva faza je konceptualizacija i, kažem, zato je naša uloga važna. I samo još jednu rečenicu, koja je pomenuo precizno podatak da ispod 20% GDP-a sveta ide iz industrije. Međutim, takozvani multiplikativni efekt industrije se prelama i preliva kroz ostale delatnosti. Kina ima 40% doprinos industrije GDP-u. Zato je Kina lider industrije 4.0. Tako da to ne smemo da zanemarimo i tim aspektom moramo da se bavimo.
Hvala profesoru Đuričinu. Samo u prilog ovoj hipotezi da kažem da se danas govori o turističkoj industriji, kreativnoj industriji, filmskoj industriji i tako dalje, i taj termin industrija kao jedan više nego promišljen, dubinski promišljen koncept organizacije društva se primenjuje i ekstrapolira na mnoge oblasti života. To svakako na neke, ne sve, nije slučajno i to je put kojim se ide. Tu kad ja govorim o značaju sociologije, filozofije i društvenih i humanističkih nauka je ono na šta ciljam i nije pohvala i plezir njima, nego kritika da moraju ovo da prate razvoj nauke i tehnologija i da nude adekvatne odgovore. I apropo odgovora i samo još jedna tema. Na ovo industrija 4.0 Japanci su odgovorili sa društvo Society 5.0. Znači, oni hoće harmonizaciju, a ne ovu tehničku, fahidiotizaciju ili grubo sam rekao. Zbog toga ima mnogo tema koje su više nego aktuelne, koje treba da u narednom periodu osvetljavamo. Hvala svima vama na izvanrednom učešću danas, pa se nadam skorom viđenju i završetku pandemije, skorom viđenju i uživo.
Hvala puno.
Hvala.
Ja bih želeo se zahvalim svim panelistima u svoje ime. Jako mi je drago što ste prisustvovali danas na ovom panelu. Želim vam puno uspeha u vašem radu i nadam se da ćemo nastaviti sa odličnom saradnjom koju smo imali do danas. Hvala još jedanput svim učesnicima.
Hvala lepo.
Hvala lepo, srećno.
Hvala. Now we will be making a short break until 4:30 when we will be joining with our keynote speaker, Dr. Andreas Mogensen. So please bear with us for a couple of minutes. Thank you.
Can we do maybe just a comp check with Andreas?
Sorry?
Can we do a comp check?
Of course. Dr. Mogensen, if you can hear me, good afternoon, or should I say good morning?
Good afternoon and good morning. Can you hear me?
Yes, quite well.
Excellent.
So
I'm glad to hear that.
I'm happy that I can say comp check completed, right?
That's right.
Thank you for that. Well, if you agree, and I see that people are slowly joining us, first of all, I would like to thank you for being here with us today. Although this is a virtual event, I would like to consider that we are having this conference in Belgrade, Serbia.
Well, thank you. It's a pleasure to be here.
Okay, well, I would like slowly to begin, and I would like to make an introduction of you so that our participants can learn a little bit more about you and your exciting job, what you do. Dr. Andreas Mogensen received a doctorate in aerospace engineering from University of Texas at Austin in the United States in 2007. His research interests include guidance, navigation, and control of spacecraft during entry, descent and landing, mission analysis and design, and trajectory optimization. Before being selected as an astronaut in 2009, Andreas was a research fellow at the SERBSPACE Center at the University of Surrey. In the UK, in his research, he focused on spacecraft guidance, navigation, and control during entry, descent, and landing for lunar missions. Alongside his astronaut duties, Andreas is also an adjunct lecturer at both the Technical University of Denmark, DTU Space, and the University at Aalborg. Andreas was selected as an ESA astronaut in May 2009 and completed the astronaut basic training program at the European Astronaut Center in Cologne, Germany, in November of 2010. He has participated in 2012 ESA Caves underground training courses and as part of an international team of 6 astronauts living underground for a week and exploring a cave system in Sardinia. Andreas was also selected as a crew member in 2 NASA Extreme Environment Mission Operations NEMO missions. Dr. Andreas Mogensen became the first Danish citizen in space on 2nd of September 2015 when he was launched on the 10-day IRIS mission to the International Space Station. While on the space station, Andreas worked as a flight engineer, performing experiments in a variety of areas. He also served as a flight engineer on Soyuz during launch and on Soyuz TMA-16M during his return flight. Andreas is currently serving as the European Astronaut Liaison Officer to NASA's Johnson Space Center, and his duties at JSC include communicating with the astronauts on board the International Space Station as Capcom from Mission Control Center, Houston. Andreas was lead Capcom for the SpaceX 12 and SpaceX 14 resupply missions. He was ground for US EVA 51, and he was astronaut in increment lead for expedition 56 and 57. Thank you once again for joining us, and please, you have the floor.
Well, thank you very much. It's a pleasure to be able to join you from Houston, Texas. Unfortunately, I'm not on the International Space Station as the picture of my background might suggest. It is last on the International Space Station. That was September of 2015. And of course, this afternoon, I want to tell you a little bit about my mission to the International Space Station, but I also want to tell you a little bit about how my dream of becoming an astronaut started. And then I also want to talk a little bit about the European Space Agency who I work for. The European Space Agency, ESA, we do a lot of very, very interesting work besides sending astronauts into space. But to begin with, let me see if I can share my screen successfully with everyone. Bear with me in just a second.
Okay. Yes.
Let's see. There we go. Can you see my screen?
Yes,
excellent.
Perfect.
That's good to hear. This is a picture that I took from the International Space Station, and I always like to start with this picture because it shows, at least in my opinion, what space exploration is all about. This picture is taken from the cupola on board the International Space Station. The cupola is our window module. It's a hemisphere made out of 7 windows. And it's the favorite place of all the astronauts. It's where we spend our free time, our weekends. And it gives us an incredible view of the Earth. Most astronauts, as I said, they come back to Earth. They talk about what a fantastic sight it is to see our beautiful blue planet from space. And there's no doubt about it. But one thing that I found to be just as beautiful and just as inspirational was to sit in cupola and look out at the night sky, look out at the stars. Because when the space station passes over the night side of the Earth, and you turn off the lights on board the space station and you give your eyes a few seconds to adjust to the darkness, you suddenly see billions and billions of stars. And it's very, very remarkable. You very quickly get a feeling of just how large our universe is, almost infinitely large. And you very quickly get an appreciation for how small the Earth is and how small all of we are in relation to the universe. And that, I think, is very optimistic or very inspirational, because when something is as large, almost infinitely large as the universe, it must mean that there are so many exciting discoveries waiting for us in the future. It must mean that there are so many exciting opportunities for us out in space, simply because it's so, so vast. You know, even though Neil Armstrong said in July of 1969, when he first set foot on the moon, that it was a giant leap for mankind, seen in relationship to the size of just our own solar system, what we did back in 1969 was take the very first small step. And we've only just begun the exploration of space. And so I'm confident, I'm certain that there are so many exciting discoveries waiting for us, and so many exciting opportunities waiting for us in the future as we move further into space. This picture also shows what most people associate with space exploration that we see when we go out at night and we look up at the night sky, all the stars, the planets, and so on. But this picture also shows the Earth. Half of the picture is made up of the Earth. And the Earth is actually a very, very big space exploration. But at least in Europe, at the European Space Agency, what we might call Earth exploration or Earth observation is a very, very large part of what we do in space. And it's actually a very, very important part that I want to talk a little bit more about later in the presentation. But the fact that the Earth is part of space exploration is something that you could say, discovered for the first time in 1968 when Apollo 8, the first mission ever to leave low Earth orbit, traveled to the moon. And they took this very, very iconic picture called Earthrise. This was the first time that humans had ever seen our planet as this blue dot or this globe hanging in the vastness and darkness of space. This was the first time that we could see our entire world. And it was almost by coincidence that they just saw this. They had just flown around the backside of the moon, and as they were coming out from behind the shadow of the moon, they looked out the window and they saw the Earth rise above the moon's horizon, and they snapped this very, very iconic picture, which in many ways has influenced our thinking. It was about the same time as the modern environmental movement. We began to appreciate the Earth as a living, breathing system that we're a part of and that we have to take care of. You know, not very many people have seen Earth like this. Only about 24 people, I think, or 21 people. You know, the Earth is so big that you don't get to see the entirety of it when you're on board the space station. You really have to travel far, far away, many thousands of kilometers out into space before you can see it out of a window as a globe like this. The last people to see the Earth like this were the crew of Apollo 17 back in 1972. But hopefully, in not too many more years, we'll be sending the next people back to the moon, and we'll once again be able to see our beautiful planet as this globe or pale blue dot. For me personally, it was also the Apollo missions to the moon that inspired me and that first started this dream in me of wanting to become an astronaut. And for me, it started back when I was in 4th or 5th grade, when I was 10 or 11 years old. And that was when I first learned about the Apollo missions to the moon and the US astronauts. And I was very, very much inspired by them, especially the sense of adventure, the sense of discovery that lay behind the Apollo missions. Even to this day, I still think one of the most remarkable things that we humans have ever done is to land on the moon. I mean, imagine landing, opening the hatch to your spacecraft, stepping out onto the surface, or even driving around the surface like on this picture. I mean, this is really exploration in a very real sense, and I still find it incredibly inspiring. Of course, back then in 4th or 5th grade, it was the adventure behind the Apollo missions that inspired me. It didn't take long before I also began to be inspired by science. More generally, this happened for me 7th grade when I learned about what's called the Mid-Atlantic Ridge in the Atlantic Ocean. This is one of the spots on Earth where two of Earth's tectonic plates move away from each other, and then molten magma rises up from the Earth's interior up to the surface, and when it meets the cold ocean water, it freezes and forms new seafloor or new Earth crust. And what's so interesting about this molten magma is that it contains iron particles, and these iron particles align themselves with Earth's magnetic field. And when you look at the ocean floor along the Mid-Atlantic Ridge in the Atlantic Ocean, you can see these different striped bands, in this picture, white and dark bands. And these bands, the iron particles point in opposite direction. And it shows clearly how Earth's magnetic poles, the North Magnetic Pole and the South Magnetic Pole, how they have swapped places throughout the history of time. And when you measure how fast these tectonic plates move away from each other, then you can calculate how often or with how many years, millions of years of time between the magnetic poles have swapped places. And that was the first time for me that I realized sort of generally what we can use science for. I mean, by making observations, by thinking, by making experiments, we can understand something as complicated as Earth's magnetic field and understand some of the processes that have occurred on Earth, even though they've occurred hundreds of thousands of years ago. And this is, this is very much still an area of study. Also at the European Space Agency, we have a fairly good idea of how the magnetic field is generated through movements of electric particles within the Earth's interior. But more complicated things like how the magnetic poles swap places, how that occurs, we really don't understand. So this is very, the European Space Agency has a mission in orbit about the Earth to study the magnetic field in more detail. This is a mission called SWARM. It consists of 3 satellites flying in formation, and the purpose of SWARM is to understand not only how the Earth's magnetic field is generated, but also how it changes with time and how it's influenced by things like the solar wind. When we look at the data currently that we're currently receiving from SWARM, we see a lot of interesting things. I mean, we see generally that the Earth's magnetic field is weakening. And we also see that the North Magnetic Pole is moving quite rapidly. And it could imply that we are due for another swap of the magnetic poles again. Of course, this is, we're talking about geological time here. So when I say we're due for another swap of the poles, it could be within, say, 10 or 20,000 years. But it's still quite interesting because we don't really know what it means for Earth and life on Earth. I mean, a lot of things depend on the Earth's magnetic field. And so what influence that has on humans, on other life forms, and on the Earth itself is very much still an open question. And so this is something that we're working with at the European Space Agency as well. Now that we're talking about magnetism, of course, is just half of what we call the electromagnetic force. And I thought it's worthwhile to mention, since I am from Denmark, that this is the 200-year anniversary of the discovery of electromagnetism by the Danish physicist Hans Christian Ørsted. And I want to bring in this example simply because I think it shows the value of scientific research, especially what we might call basic research. Hans Christian Ørsted discovered electromagnetism almost by accident. And he wasn't so much worried about the applications of his discovery as just the fact that it gave him a deeper understanding of the true nature of the world around him. But of course, electromagnetism today is absolutely fundamental to our modern society. Electromagnetism is what lies behind everything from electric motors to electrical generators. And so it's, you find it in your refrigerator, in your vacuum cleaner, in electric cars, and wind turbines. So it really is today a fundamental part of our modern society. And it all goes back 200 years ago to a discovery made during a lecture when Hans Christian Ørsted noticed that a compass needle would deflect whenever he moved a wire with an electric current over the compass. My interest in science grew as I entered high school and later college. In high school, I started reading books about science. And one thing that fascinated me back then and still fascinates me today is the fact that if we look out into the universe and we try to count everything that we can see, then all the matter that we call normal matter, the matter that I'm made of, the matter that you're made of, the matter that my house and the earth is made of, constitutes only about 5% of the universe. Then there's about 25% that we call dark matter, and about 70% we call dark energy. Why do we call it dark matter and dark energy? Well, because we don't really know what it is in truth, and we have to call it something, and so we call it dark matter and dark energy. But again, I think this is very, very exciting, because when we only know really what 5% of the universe is made of, when 95% of the universe is still sort of unknown to us, it must mean that there are a lot of exciting discoveries waiting for us in the future. I mean, we like to think that we know virtually everything there is to know about the universe, but in many respects, there are still a lot of gaps in our knowledge, and I'm confident that there are a lot of exciting discoveries waiting for us in the future. And of course, this question of what the universe is made of and what it consists of today is also something that that we work with at the European Space Agency. And just to mention another couple missions, in the last 10 years, we've had two satellites, Herschel and Planck. They are essentially space telescopes with the purpose of trying to understand how the universe was formed, how it developed over time, and what it consists of today. So this is another very important question that we work with at the European Space Agency. And still a lot of open questions remain as to the essence of the universe. So a very, very, very interesting area of study still. My interest was also piqued in high school and later at university by the planet Mars. Still today, I think the planet Mars is one of the most interesting planets in our solar system. And it's certainly a destination where we would like to send humans in the future. And the reason Mars is such an interesting planet, part of the reason you can see from this picture, this is a picture that shows the difference in elevations of Mars's surface. The blue and purple colors correspond to low-lying areas, while the yellow, red, and white colors correspond to high elevation areas. So if you look sort of to the left middle, you'll see 3 white dots in a row, and then 1 large white dot to the left of that. Those are volcanoes. The one on the left is Olympus Mons, the largest volcano in our solar system. But what's so interesting about this picture of the elevation of the surface of Mars is that in many ways, Mars consists of 2 different hemispheres. There's the northern hemisphere that's primarily blue in color, and then there's the southern hemisphere of Mars that's red and orange in color. Now, if you look at the northern hemisphere of Mars, up where the blue color is, you'll see very few craters. There are a few craters, but not nearly as many as on the southern hemisphere of Mars. Now, this area of Mars reminds us a lot of the Earth. Here on the Earth, we don't have a lot of craters. If you go outside and look around, you won't see very many. There are a few, but not a lot on the Earth. And the reason we don't have a lot of craters on the Earth is because we have erosion through wind, water, and other weather phenomena. So when craters form on the Earth, after a few thousands or millions of years, they disappear again. Now, on the southern hemisphere of Mars, we see a huge number of craters, and it reminds us a lot of the moon. And on the moon, you have a lot of craters because there's no erosion from weather. There is no atmosphere on the moon. There's no water. And so when a crater forms on the moon, it's there for almost eternity. Now, statistically speaking, there ought to be just as many craters on the northern hemisphere of Mars as on the southern hemisphere, which means that there must have been some sort of process that eroded some of the craters on the northern hemisphere. We don't know exactly what. Perhaps it's magma or lava from the volcanoes that flowed into the northern hemisphere, but it could also be water. It could be rivers, lakes, a large inland sea that cause these craters to disappear. And that's very, very exciting. We have a lot of other evidence that suggests that there was once liquid water on the surface of Mars. And the reason that's so interesting is because we believe water is one of the prerequisites for life. So if there was ever liquid water on Mars, perhaps there was also life. And I'm not thinking about intelligent Martians. I'm thinking about bacteria and other microorganisms. But this is one of the biggest questions that we work with within space exploration and within ESA, this question of life. How did life originate? Is there life other places in the universe? And this is one question that we hope to explore further with the help of our ExoMars rover. This is a rover, a European ESA-built rover that will be sent to Mars in, right now, I think the launch date is September 2022. And the purpose of the ExoMars rover is to not only look for signs of water, but also signs of life. It includes a small drill that can drill into the surface of Mars and analyze the soil on Mars to look for signs of water and signs of life. So a very, very exciting mission that'll hopefully give us a lot more information about Mars. Now, at this point in my life, when I was in high school in Denmark, I realized that my interest in science, and in particular my interest in space exploration, was so big that I wanted to work with space exploration, even if I couldn't be an astronaut. I still had this dream of mine to be an astronaut that originated with the Apollo missions back in 4th or 5th grade. But I realized that the chance of actually becoming an astronaut were very, very small. So I decided to become an aerospace engineer instead. And that way I could help to build satellites and other spacecraft and send them into space if I couldn't become an astronaut and go into space myself. So that's what I did. I became an aerospace engineer. I worked for a few years with satellites. And then in 2008, I applied to become an astronaut with the European Space Agency. And after a full year of tests, I was among the lucky 6 new European astronauts selected by the European Space Agency. And I could then begin my training as an astronaut at the European Astronaut Center in Cologne, Germany. And 6 years later, after starting in 2009, I was ready for my first mission to the International Space Station in 2015. But even today, I continue to be fascinated and inspired by space exploration. This is an incredible photo, I think, that really fascinated me when I saw it the first time. You know, it's become very, very popular to take selfies And I think this is one of the most incredible selfies ever taken. This is the Rosetta spacecraft, an ESA mission. And the Rosetta spacecraft here has taken a picture of its own solar panel. And then in the background, you can see the comet 67P that Rosetta is orbiting. Rosetta was launched way back in 2004. It took Rosetta 10 years to travel through our solar system before it arrived at the comet and could enter orbit. And then it spent a couple of years studying the orbit, sending back incredible photos like this, a lot of interesting data before the mission ended a few years later. A very, very fascinating detail on this picture, I think, is if you look up at the comet, if the quality is good enough on this internet connection, you can see this, this jet of gas that the comet is shooting into space. So an incredible photo, I think, that to this day fascinates and still inspires me. So that was a few words about my own journey to become an astronaut, and also a few words on some of the different work that we do at the European Space Agency. This is just a very quick slide I want to show about our budget, the budget of the European Space Agency for 2020. It's a budget of about 6.5 billion euros, and I want to draw your attention to the slice called Earth Observation, which is actually our largest program. It's about a quarter of our annual budget is used on Earth observation. And so going back to one of my first points, studying the Earth from space is a very, very big part of space exploration, even though we don't often associate the Earth with space. But it is a very important part of the work that we do at ESA. And the primary goal, of course, is to understand the planet that we all live on, to understand how it functions and how it changes with time. You know, one of the biggest challenges that we face currently is global climate change. And it's only through global observations, including global satellite observations, that we can begin to understand the Earth as this very complicated and complex geological and biological system where we humans are affected by everything else, and where we humans also can affect the Earth for better or worse. And just a few words on some of the Earth observation work that we do. We have a scientific program consisting of several different Earth observation satellites. We've already mentioned the SWARM mission that studies the Earth's magnetic field, but we have many, many other missions that study everything from the gravity field to soil moisture and ocean salinity, to the radiative balance between the Earth and space, to the thickness of land and sea ice, and also to wind velocities throughout the depth of the atmosphere. And the goal of this scientific Earth observation program is to make us much smarter, to give us a better understanding of the Earth and how we're affecting the Earth and how the Earth is changing with time. In addition to the scientific program, we also have an operational Earth observation program called Copernicus. It's actually a European Union run program where ESA is delivering the entire space segment, which consists of several Sentinel satellites. One curious thing or fun thing to note is when you ask scientists to name satellites, you get a lot of very fun names like Swarm, Goche. And when you ask engineers to develop an operational system, you get a lot of satellites called Sentinels 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6. But this is a very, very exciting program, the Copernicus program. These satellites are constantly, on a daily basis, sending back data in the form of optical imaging, radar images, laser altimeter measurements of the Earth. And what's so interesting about this data is that it is free for use by everyone on Earth. Everyone can go onto the Copernicus homepage and download this data, and you can use this data for whatever you like, to start a business, to develop software, to provide a service, an app, and you can, using that data for free, you can create a business and earn money. So it's very, very special. You don't have to pay royalties. And already we see this data being used for a lot of very, very interesting applications, including what we call precision agriculture. So farmers can use data like this to analyze their crops and to determine what part of their crops they need to treat with fertilizer. You know, traditionally farmers have sprayed their entire fields with fertilizer or with pesticides. They've watered their entire field, even though perhaps it's only one small corner of the field that actually needs to be treated with pesticides. So data like this is really going to change the future of our society, in the same way I think that satellite navigation in the last 10, 15 years have really changed our society. So a very, very interesting project, a collaboration between ESA and the EU. Now, of course, the part of ESA that I work with, human spaceflight, and if I quickly go back to our budget, you'll see that human spaceflight and robotic exploration of the moon and Mars only constitutes about 10% of our budget. A lot of people say or ask the question, you know, space exploration is so expensive. Shouldn't we use that money to improve Earth? And my answer is we are using most of that money, you know, in our Earth observation program, in our navigation program. It's only 10% that we use for human and robotic exploration, which is, I consider to be a very long-term investment in the future of our society. We are going to see a lot of benefits from our human exploration program. It's just that the timescales are much longer than when we were talking about Earth observation, for example. Currently, the focus of our human exploration program is the International Space Station, which is celebrating its 20th anniversary this year. The first crew members moved onto the space station in November of 2000. So a month from now, it'll be 20 years that we've had astronauts living and working on board the International Space Station. And that's permanently, continuously. There hasn't been a single day in the last 20 years where we haven't had people in space. And I think that in itself is a very remarkable thought. For all of those for all those of us who have children under the age of 20, there hasn't been a single day in their lives when we haven't had humans in space. And so whether or not we realize it, we have become a spacefaring species. The first module of the space station was actually sent into space in 1998, and it took us the next 11 or 12 years to assemble it piece by piece. And of course, reason we had to do it like that is because a space station today is so large that you can't launch it in just one piece. You have to assemble it piece by piece. The size of the space station is about equivalent to a football field. So the space station is about 100 meters wide and about 80 meters long. So a very, very large space station, and probably the most complicated engineering machine that we have ever constructed as humans. We've constructed that in low Earth orbit. It's a very, very remarkable scientific laboratory where we can do all sorts of different scientific studies within biology, physics, chemistry, physiology, and a lot of technological development. But as I said, the first module was launched in 1998. The first crew moved on board in November 2000, and we've been operating it ever since then. And what we've been spending that time doing, of course, is scientific research and technological development. You might ask, well, what's so interesting about doing science in space? And what makes the work that we do on board the space station so interesting is that we can begin to investigate the effects of gravity or the effects of a lack of gravity on biological, chemical, and physical processes. Now, gravity is one of the few things that has remained constant ever since the Earth was formed 4.5 billion years ago, which means, just to take one example, it means that all life on Earth has had to adapt to gravity. And so it's very interesting to see what happens when you remove gravity. How do cells in our bodies change? How do plants and animals react when they're no longer affected by gravity? And if we just take astronauts and their bodies in human physiology, we see a lot of very interesting effects from weightlessness. Astronauts in space tend to lose muscle mass, they tend to lose bone density, their immune systems get compromised, even their eyesight is affected by the weightlessness of space. And understanding how this happens and also how we can counteract that is extremely important if we want to move further into space, if we want to return to the moon, and if we want to send humans to Mars in the future. A Mars mission, a human Mars mission, will probably take somewhere between 2 and 3 years. It takes about 6 months to travel to Mars. Then you have to wait on Mars for about 1.5 years before Mars and Earth are in the correct position before you can fly 6 months home again. So all in all, a round trip of about 2.5 years. In order to survive those 2.5 years, it's important that we understand how the body is affected by space travel and weightlessness, and how we can counteract that. Because of course, we want to make sure that the astronauts that we send to Mars are healthy and safe throughout their long journey. What's also very interesting about this research is that it has direct applications on Earth. Again, just to take an example of human physiology, weightlessness, the environment of weightlessness is very similar to patients who are admitted to hospital and who are bedridden for days or weeks at a time. If you're bedridden and you can't get out of bed for several weeks, you'll also experience a loss of muscle mass and a loss of bone density that's very similar to what astronauts experience. So by studying astronauts in space, we gain medical knowledge that we can use here on Earth. And of course, a lot of older people experience what's called osteoporosis, which essentially is a loss of bone density. So again, studying astronauts in space and the process by which they lose bone density, we gain knowledge that we can use here to help the elderly, because osteoporosis is actually something that astronauts in space also experience. So a lot of interesting scientific knowledge that we can gain from working on board the International Space Station. Just a few words about the space station itself. As I said, it's about the size of a football field. It orbits the Earth at an altitude of about 400 kilometers and flies with a speed of about 28,000 kilometers per hour. In other words, it only takes 1.5 hours for the space station to fly once around the Earth. In other words, in the space of 24 hours, the astronauts will see 16 sunrises and 16 sunsets on board the space station. So there's no sort of normal day-night rhythm on board the space station. And we have chosen to use Greenwich Mean Time. So when it's 6 a.m. in England, we get up on board the space station, and when it's 10 or 11 p.m. at night in England, we go to bed. But we could have used any time zone simply because there is no natural time zone on board the space station. A lot of, as I said, a lot of things happen to the human body. And so astronauts are a form of guinea pigs in space. We do a lot of the research with ourselves as test subjects. And during my mission, I was asked to test a new garment that I'm wearing in this picture, it's called a skin suit. Because in addition to losing muscle mass and bone density, astronauts also tend to grow in weightlessness. Some astronauts in the space of 6 months might grow as much as 5 or 6 centimeters in height, which is quite extreme. Now, if some of you think that that's a great way to get a little bit taller, I'm sorry to say it's not permanent. As soon as you return to Earth, you also return to your normal height. But while you're in space, you tend to be a little bit taller, and it probably has something to do with the fact that your spine no longer has to support the weight of your head. And so just like a spring that relaxes, the spine tends to elongate and you grow. But this can lead to a lot of problems like lower back pain. And so we've developed a skin suit to try to alleviate that. This suit is sort of like a wetsuit that divers use, except it has special fibers woven into the fabric that attempt to prevent the spinal elongation. What you might also recognize on this picture is that I'm exercising. This white box at my feet is actually a bicycle on board the space station. It's one of 3 ways that we can exercise. We also have a treadmill, and then we have a strength exercise machine. Exercise is incredibly important. It's the only way we know of today that we can prevent the loss of muscle mass and bone density. So it's actually a requirement for astronauts who spend more than a few weeks on board the space station to exercise for 2 hours every single day. Some other technology that I had a chance to work with during my mission in 2015 is a water cleaning system. You know, one of the challenges of spaceflight is the cost of sending anything into space. So we try to reuse as much as we can on board the space station, which means that all of our wastewater, all of our condensation, and even all of our urine is collected, and it's treated and processed and is turned back into drinking water. So we tend to say that the coffee we had yesterday is the same coffee that we're going to have tomorrow on board the space station. But of course, treating wastewater and turning it back into drinking water is a very energy intensive and chemical intensive process. But there are new technologies on the market, including an osmotic membrane from a company in Denmark called Aquaporin that can cleanse water without the use of chemicals or energy. This osmotic membrane is similar to the membranes found in our body. It consists of proteins that only permits water molecules to move through the membrane. And so it's a way that you can clean water without chemicals and energy. So a very exciting technology that we'll probably see more of, not only in space, but also here on Earth. We're also working a lot with improving robotic technology. I had a chance to control a rover on the Earth from the space station. When we return to the moon and later when we send humans to Mars, we will probably use robots even more than we do today. And so we're constantly trying to improve how we can interact with robots. Most likely, we'll send robotic precursor missions to the moon and Mars before we send humans that can begin to prepare the landing site and maybe to construct habitats and other necessary elements that we need for human missions. Of course, the space station is also an excellent platform to study the Earth from. And I also had a chance to work on an experiment to study lightning in the atmosphere. These are gigantic lightnings that we call blue jets and red sprites. And what's so special about this type of lightning is that it shoots upwards out towards space. Sometimes they shoot all the way up to an altitude of 80 or 90 kilometers. We don't know very much about this type of lightning. We don't know under what conditions they form. We don't know how often they form, and we don't really understand the effect on the atmosphere. But we believe that they must have a certain effect on the atmosphere simply because there's so much energy released during these gigantic lightning strikes. And so currently we have an ESA science experiment called ASIM on board the space station that consists of cameras and X-ray detectors whose purpose is to study these gigantic lightning strikes. ASIM, the experiment experiment wasn't in space yet in 2015. It arrived on board the space station in 2018, but I was asked to do a little precursor experiment during my time. I was asked to use a simple camera, handheld camera, and take photos of some of these gigantic lightning strikes out of the windows. And I have to admit, I was a little bit skeptical because I've never seen a blue jet or a red stripe before. And I wasn't certain what the chances were of actually photographing some of these phenomenon during my time on board the space station. But it turned out I was very, very lucky. And I have a few pictures here that I hope you can see. So here we have a photo of a thundercloud, a typical thundercloud that's lit up with traditional white lightning that we know from the Earth. Here we see a picture, and hopefully you can see these red sprites, these red lightning shooting upwards, just above the white glare. And hopefully here you can see a blue jet, again shooting upwards to space. And it turned out I had been so lucky to capture this blue jet as it pulsated. And I have a short video that I'm going to show you here where you'll see this blue jet pulsating. It happens fast. So if you miss it the first time, I've slowed it down and enlarged it. So you have 3 opportunities to see it. Let me start the video and hopefully you'll be able to see this. You should look sort of to the right of the screen and you'll see there was the blue jet. It'll come again right now, a little bit slower and larger, and then finally one more time right in the middle of the screen, even slower and even larger before. So right there. When I saw this, I was incredibly excited, and I quickly sent it back to the scientists behind this experiment, who also became very excited, because it turns out that this is the first time that we've seen a blue jet captured on video like this. So very, very exciting that we can still make new discoveries about our planet. And this is Cupola. This is our window module. This is where I was sitting when I took these photos of the gigantic lightning strikes. As I said to begin with, this is one of our favorite places on board the space station, where you can really observe our beautiful planet. The cupola is actually a workplace, even though we love to spend our free time there. The cupola is where we control the space station robotic arm from, which we use in support of spacewalks. We use it to repair things that are broken on the outside of the space station. And we also use it to capture some of these unmanned cargo vehicles that arrive at the space station. Some of these cargo vehicles cannot dock automatically, and so they hover at a distance of about 10 meters from the space station. And it's the astronaut's job then to use a 17-meter long robotic arm and grab these cargo vehicles, which typically include anywhere from 2 to 4 tons of cargo that the astronauts need for their stay on board the space station. But when we're not using it to control the space station, we're spending our time looking out of the windows and looking at the Earth. And as I said, seeing the Earth from space is just remarkable. One of the first things you notice is the contrasting colors between the blue water, the white clouds, and the pitch black color of space that surrounds us. You also very quickly notice this thin blue line in the upper left corner. That thin blue line is our atmosphere. And maybe because the Earth looks so big out the window and space that surrounds us looks so big, that blue line seems very, very thin. Maybe because it seems so thin, you also begin to think that it perhaps is fragile. It's something we ought to take care of, because if that blue line disappears, it means there's no longer an atmosphere, and without an atmosphere, no life can exist on Earth. Another thing that you notice when you're flying over the day side of the Earth, like on this picture, is that you don't see signs of humans. You can't see cities, you can't see roads or bridges, and you can't see borders between countries. And so you very quickly get this feeling that the Earth is is almost uninhabited and very, very peaceful. It's not until you get over to the night side of the Earth that you can see the lights from all the cities light up the night sky, and you begin to appreciate just how many people actually live on the Earth. On the day side like this, the Earth seems peaceful and uninhabited. This is about as much of the Earth as you can see when you're looking out of one window, and that's simply because the space station is only orbiting at a height of about 400 kilometers. As I said earlier, you need to go several thousands of kilometers out into space on the way to the moon before you can see the Earth as one single globe or planet. And no one has seen that since 1972, but hopefully in the 2020s, we will return humans to the moon. ESA is working together with NASA on building a space station in orbit about the moon called the Gateway. And NASA, of course, is also working on returning humans together with ESA to the surface of the moon. So hopefully in the mid to late 2020s, we'll see astronauts not only in orbit about the moon, but back on the surface of the moon. And the European Space Agency and Europe, through the European Space Agency, is very much a part of our return to the moon. We are building the service module for the Orion spacecraft that will take the astronauts to the moon. And we're also building 2 modules of the Gateway space station that will orbit the moon. So we can definitely look forward to seeing European astronauts go into the moon together with NASA astronauts in the 2020s. So a very, very exciting future, both in human exploration of space, but also in all the other aspects of space exploration, including Earth observation that we work with at the European Space Agency. It's an incredibly exciting time in space exploration at the moment, and we have a lot to look forward to. I think I'm going to stop there today and leave about 10 minutes for questions. If anyone has any questions, I'll be happy to take them at this point.
Thank you, Dr. Mogensen, for such an inspiring scientific and educational presentation. And I'm sure that our audience also enjoyed it very, very much. As you said, we have prepared a couple of questions for you. I will be reading out the first 2 questions, and my co-host, Dr. Milan Stojanovic, will take after me. So my first question is, Dr. Mogensen, you are from a rather small ESA member state and comparable to Serbia in the number of citizens. However, small countries do not have the means and capabilities for manned spaceflight. What would you recommend for Serbia for getting their first astronaut in space?
You're absolutely right. But this is what makes the European Space Agency so special, because it gives all the European countries that participate in ESA a chance not only to participate in human spaceflight, but in also all the other areas that we work with at ESA. You know, space exploration is expensive. It's very difficult for any one country to go it alone. And so by pooling our resources, by cooperating, not only within Europe, but also with our international partners in the US, in Canada, in Russia, and Japan, we can accomplish much, much more. It's actually one of the biggest lessons that we've learned from the International Space Station, and it's also why we're taking that same partnership that's behind the International Space Station and taking it with us when we go to the moon. Not only is NASA and ESA working on sending humans to the moon, but it's also in collaboration with our Japanese and Canadian partners, and hopefully also with our Russian partners from the International Space Station. So my recommendation is to continue your collaboration with ESA, because I truly believe that it's through ESA that we in Europe can achieve the best results in space exploration.
Okay, thank you so much. And the second question is, which are the main results from your scientific research during your IRIS mission? Which would you emphasize as the most important?
Oh, that's a good question. It's very difficult sometimes to say what will be the outcome or what will be the applications. Just like Hans Christian Ørsted in 1820 discovered electromagnetism without really understanding the applications of it. You know, we're doing research on board the space station where it's hard to predict. I would say probably the most interesting experiment that I participated in was this study of giant lightning, simply because it was an experiment where I got a very, very tangible result, a result that hadn't been found before, and that allowed scientists to gain a deeper understanding of these blue jets. And actually in January this year, the science team behind the ASEN experiment made the cover of Science magazine, which is one of the most prestigious science journals. So it's a very, very interesting experiment currently running on board the International Space Station.
Thank you. Thank you so much. And I would now like to give the word to my co-host to ask his question. Thank you.
So I have one question, because you mentioned the achievements that human did. I mean, like landing on the moon and the Rosetta spacecraft and things like that. Can you tell me something about, from your perspective of as somebody who was so much involved into the ISS and all these projects, what do you think about the achievement of sending the lander on the asteroid? The Japanese space agency actually did that. They sent it, and then they returned some samples. So in a way of landing on the asteroid, I guess it's much harder than landing on the moon.
Yeah, there are so many fascinating missions going on constantly. I could only select a few examples for my presentation, but you're absolutely right. Some of these asteroid missions, including Hayabusa, were very, very interesting. ESA is also working together with NASA on an upcoming asteroid mission, where we will also begin to increase our understanding of asteroids and what danger they impose on the Earth, and how we might in the future be able to deflect them if we discover an asteroid that might have the potential to hit the Earth. When talking about returning samples, one of the sort of key future missions that we're working towards is what we call a Mars sample return mission. You know, Mars, as I said, is very, very exciting, and we would love to have a piece of Mars back on Earth for study. And so we are working together with our international partners on a Mars sample return, sending a spacecraft that can land on Mars, take a sample, and return that to the Earth. So there are so many very, very interesting missions coming up in the future as well.
Thank you. We have one question that arrived over the email. It's a very interesting question. So you mentioned the space telescopes, but they want to know if there is a telescope mounted on the ISS, maybe not the telescope, but camera that is not observing always the Earth, but the space.
So, I mean, we have, on board the space station, we don't have what you might call a space telescope, but there are many other space telescopes, of course, including probably the most famous, the Hubble Space Telescope. And again, we're working together with NASA on the next space telescope. It's called the Webb Space Telescope, which hopefully will launch in the next couple of years. Space telescopes are very, very interesting, I think, because they give us an ability not just to observe the universe, but to discover new things. You know, in the last decade or so, we've discovered planets that orbit stars, just like the Earth orbits the sun. When I was a kid back in 4th or 5th grade, when I first learned about the Apollo missions, we only knew about the 9 planets in our own solar system. No one had ever seen a planet outside of our solar system. But today we know that most stars probably have planets just like the Earth. And so some of these space telescopes might even be able to discover signs of life on some of these extraterrestrial planets. You might have heard a week or two ago, scientists discovered the element phosphine in the atmosphere of Venus, which we believe is created by life forms. And in the same way, we can use space telescopes in the future to make observations of the atmosphere of some of these planets that might be many, many, many light years away from us. And through those observations, we might be able to say something about whether or not these planets contain life, even though we can't send astronauts to them.
Thank you.
Well, thank you once again, Dr. Mogensen. Unfortunately, there are much other questions which have remained unanswered, but as we are closing to the end of our lectures, I would like to thank you once again from all of us for being with us today.
Oh, my pleasure. It was a pleasure to be part of your conference, and it's always, I think, excellent to see interest in space exploration growing. As I said, the European collaboration that we have among the European countries within ESA is very, very positive for all of Europe, I think. So I appreciate the opportunity to be able to talk with you today.
We do believe that we will join the European space community at some moment. And until then, well, I can just say once again, thank you, and have a great, successful day today. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. Well, I do hope that you have enjoyed our keynote lecturer, Dr. Andreas Mogensen, who has shared the details about his space mission. And we are now going on with our next speaker. Her name is Laura Gonzalez Lamazares, and she's coming from Spain. She has an exciting topic she's going to share with us now. Laura, can you hear us?
Yes, hello, how are you?
Hello, nice to hear you. I'm well, how about you?
Very well, thank you very much. Can you see my screen? There we go.
Yes, hello.
Hello everyone, how are you?
Thank you for asking. Hope that you are well. We can see your presentation, Engineering Small Satellites in the Cloud, Driving Innovative Solutions from Spain. You have the floor.
Perfect, thank you very much, Milan. So good afternoon, my name is Laura and I am the Chief Marketing Officer and co-founder of Radiant Systems, that is the company that aims to ease access to thermal analysis for space. I'm also a volunteer for SGAC, that is the Space Generation Advisory Council, a non-profit organization for students and young professionals in the space industry. First of all, I want to thank the organization for such an interesting event. It's been very, very interesting talks, and thank you for inviting us here today. As you know, the Southeast Europe Space Conference 2020 is supported by the Spanish Embassy in Belgrade, so I wanted to start with a quick overview of the Spanish history in space. Spain's activity in space started in 1942 with the establishment of INTA, that is the National Institute of Aerospace Technology, where I'm actually currently an intern. Spain doesn't have a formal space agency, but INTA is the closest thing that we have to a space agency because it is the public organization that belongs to the Department of Defense that does research and development activities and also participates in ESA and NASA projects and also its own space projects. In these slides, I have summed up some of the milestones, like the development of the first Spanish satellite that was launched in 1974, or collaborations with NASA from the early beginning, supporting missions like Mercury, Gemini, or Apollo. It's interesting to note that some of the ground stations that we have around Madrid, like Robledo and Fresnedillas, were some of the main links with astronauts Armstrong and Aldrin when they contacted from the moon in the Apollo 11 mission. Currently, Robledo, that is one of the stations that you can see in the screen, this station is part of the Deep Space Network of NASA, together with other stations in California and Australia, and is currently broadcasting and connecting, tracking some famous probes like the Mariner, Viking, Voyager, the Cassini-Huygens has been very important point. Not only NASA, but also ESA has facilities around Madrid. Here we can see in Villafranca, in ESAC, that is the European Space Astronomy Center, is where science operations are conducted. It's the Science Operations Center for many missions, and it's where all the scientific data is produced and achieved and made accessible to the whole world. And as you know, in 1975, ESA was founded, the European Space Agency, and Spain was one of the founding members. And since then, we've been participating in many missions, not only with INTA and institutions, but also with the different companies that are nowadays working in the space segment in Spain, like Airbus, Thales Alenia Space, GMB, and all of these. Also from the ESA side, there's also the program Galileo, and here in Spain we have 2 centers for Galileo. One is the GNSS Service Center and also the Galileo Security Monitoring Center. But as the astronaut just before me was saying, I believe that the most important things about space and it's the capacity to be able to collaborate and have all this very inspiring ecosystem, international ecosystem. And even though these big missions are still out there and they're still happening, we have to acknowledge that the space has experienced a big revolution in the last few years. In the same way that miniaturization of electronics has changed other technologies so drastically, from those computers that filled whole rooms, entire rooms, to having even more processing power in our mobile phones, in our hands, similarly, a new segment has arisen in the space industry, and it is what we call the new space, with the philosophy of developing less expensive satellites in certain periods of time. This democratization of space, how they call it, is making it possible for more and more companies to be involved in the space sector, not only the agencies, governments, or large companies like it was in the past. This new segment has grown. This new segment that has grown during the last decade has much lower budgets and development times than the traditional space industry. While the traditional industry spends hundreds of millions and more than 10 years developing spacecraft, small satellites that are very typical of the new space can be developed within 1 year and costing around $1 million. This affordable and fast time to market allows new players, such as universities and smaller companies, the access to space. And our goal in Radiant Systems, my company, is to contribute to this evolution in the space sector, where more agile and efficient satellite development is possible. This segment of new small satellites, nanosatellites, has an enormous potential, with 160% growth in the last few years and a market volume estimation of $2.6 billion for the next 5 years. And now talking a little bit about the space environment, as many of you know, a satellite orbiting the Earth is exposed to a very high gradient of temperatures. Temperatures that the satellite is exposed to can range from 100 degrees when it's exposed to the sunlight to minus 100 degrees when it's in eclipse. And the components in a satellite, especially electronics, are not able to withstand these extreme temperatures. Therefore, temperatures in the satellite must be controlled and kept in a safe range. And in order to do this, before the launch and during the design phase, the satellite temperatures are simulated and studied according to the desired orbit and mechanical design, taking into account a wide range of parameters, from the orbit altitude and inclination to the components, contacts, surfaces, configurations, and so on. So it's a very complex program. Using the results of this simulation of these temperatures, engineers can modify the design and optimize it so that the temperatures stay in the desired range. And in order to do this, we also have thermal control systems that can be active or passive, such as radiators, MLIs, different coatings, heaters, heat pipes. However, some spacecraft, especially nanosatellites nowadays, are launched without a previous thermal analysis, and this implies a high risk that can result in the complete loss of the satellite. This is a lot of money sometimes. This is because the current tools available in the market are not optimized. They are pricey, they are offered within non-efficient software frameworks, and its low automation implies a high cost overrun. They also have a big learning curve that implies the engineer or the university student that is doing that satellite spends a lot of time and effort learning how to use the software and not actually using it and using it to simulate the temperatures that he wants to. On top of this, the failure ratio of the small satellites is approximately 35%, and it is mainly due to the design issues, including the lack of thermal analysis. In Radiant Systems, we want to contribute to the democratization of space, providing a more agile and efficient thermal analysis tool for satellites. Our thermal and orbit simulator is based in a very simple and intuitive web application. And this tool provides automated designs that reduce the design phase to 30 times, and also smart diagnostics that speed up the post-analysis around 10 times. At Radiant, we're developing the only cloud-based solution for thermal analysis in the market that is saving server maintenance cost. Also, it is automated, reducing the labor cost of runs. It is smart, helping the client in decision-making, and it is modular so that we can offer parts of the software as tailored solution. It is also scalable, so this encourages a rapid expansion to other types of mission analysis and platforms and even sectors in the future. As case studies, we've been working with several university groups that are developing small satellites. One of the teams was in Australia, and there were two other European ones, TEDESAT and a CubeSat, who we supported and helped for the selection of the program Fly Your Satellite. For the people that didn't know about this program, Fly Your Satellite, is a program by the European Space Agency that provides the teams, the university teams, with support for the development, for the test and the launch of the satellite. It's a very interesting program. And we can proudly say that Radiant's technology has already been validated in space, because last year on December 2019, FOSSASat-1 was successfully launched into space, becoming our first case study to reach orbit, validating Radiant's thermal analysis. FOSSASat, this small satellite here, is an open source picosatellite. It is a 5 centimeter sided pocket cube that is designed to create a global low-cost Internet of Things network. And in Radiant Systems, we developed the thermal model and the thermal analysis for FOSSASat, in particular a hot case and a cold case that we derived from the solar irradiance and FOSSASat-1 operational modes. Here you can see some of the results of the thermal analysis for the internal systems and also for the deployable panels. And as it is so small and has such a low mass, the thermal inertia is very slow. So the thermal changes are very sudden, as you can see in these slides. However, after launch, the superior panels did not deploy. So this prevented the folded antennas from deploying as well. So there's a small variation, but the data packages that we received were conclusive enough to validate our thermal analysis. Here are the results. FOSSASat-1 is equipped with 3 temperature sensors. You can see them in these pictures here. It's TX that is located in the superior panel, then TBAT, which measures the battery temperature, and TCPU that belongs to the onboard computer. However, this last one, the TCPU, actually failed, so we didn't have the values for that one. But for the other 2 sensors, we got 16 samples and 20 samples from the beginning of January this year to the end of February, more or less. And as you can see in the slides, FOSSASat-1 flight temperatures, these temperatures lie within the predicted ranges and margins that we calculated from thermal analysis in Radiant Systems. So this is just the beginning. We're constantly improving and upgrading our software, implementing new features, but a beta version of Radiant is already commercially available. So if you have any questions about any of these things, please let me know. And this is all I wanted to share with you today. Thank you very much. I think we already have some time for questions.
Hey, Laura, thanks a lot for the wonderful presentation. As I can see, there aren't any questions now in the Q&A box, but if some arrive in the meanwhile, I'm going to forward it to your email. How does that sound?
Okay, yeah, sure. You have my email in the screen now, so if anyone has any questions, please feel free to contact me, or even for some collaboration, so whatever's on your mind.
Well, we as an office are always open for cooperation, so I'm looking forward to that I can tell you already. So once again, thank you for the presentation.
Thank you very much, Milan. Thank you.
Thank you. And this concludes today's industry session. I do hope that all the attendees have enjoyed being with us today. I do invite you to join us tomorrow for the society session. There are several lectures which will be presented, as well as a couple of panels. And I would like to give the word to my co-host, Milan, to also share a couple of words.
Thank you. I would say that this was a very interesting day, and we had a very nice presentations today. We learned a lot. The panel about Industry 4.0 was very educational. We heard a lot of new and informative things. So I guess that I expect everybody to see you tomorrow again for our final day. We'll have still a lot of interesting presentations for the tomorrow. Thank you all for coming.
Thank you. Bye-bye.